3. Well, there's been some political reaction to these new stats from the ONS today, from the Conservatives. Here's their shadow business secretary, Andrew Griffith, who's very concerned about the impact this exodus of people
Aberdeen,
might have on this country's economy.
It's rather terrible and despondent news. I think it's a combination of some very direct measures about wealth creators, about changes to non-dom rules and other specifics. And also, sadly, a sort of vibe thing about young people in particular finding more potential opportunity, more hope, more openings, perhaps a slightly different approach to street crime in other countries overseas. Which is a crying shame, given that we have one of the world's best global capital cities, and yet people seem to be fleeing from it.
Who do you blame for this, if anybody?
Africa.
Look, I don't want to pretend everything happened on the 4th of July last year in 2024, but I do think that the government, particularly with its changes on some of the taxes, the way it talks about wealth creators, has quite a lot to answer for. I think you look back at some of the challenges of street crime, people feeling that we live in a slightly lawless environment, whether it's on the tube, in shoplifting, that's a bit more on the mare. But as I say, I mean, the main thing is we should all be deeply saddened that young and ambitious people feel that they have to leave in ever greater numbers. It's always been something we've done. You know, this country, young people from this country built the Commonwealth, the empire as it once was. You travel around the world and find bridges built in Australia and railroads in Canada by people from Britain. It feels here, though, that people are doing so a little bit more under sufferance.
This is particularly in the under 30 age group, I think. And do you not think that Brexit has had something to do with this?
Look, I hope not. I don't see particularly why that would be the case. I mean, notwithstanding Brexit, we've still got one of the most permissive regimes, something that's not been fully reciprocated by the European Union in terms of people's ability to come here. I think personally it's a little bit more about some of the economics, about where there are more job openings, where people feel they've perhaps got more chance of finding an affordable rent or a property to purchase, and a little bit about the general vibe of opportunity. I think it's sad. I think people leaving are not necessarily fully appreciating the enduring strengths of the UK, which will prevail almost despite whichever government is in power. But clearly there is a little bit that this government contributes. And critically, Ian, they've been in denial. I mean, I've had ministers tell me that, you know, all of the press about people leaving is a put-up job, that that's not what's happening. And I think the ONS statistics really give the lie to that.
But isn't it a bit rich for you to blame Labour for this? I know you said earlier you're not just blaming them, but they only got in July last year. These figures go to the end of 2024, so the Conservatives were in power for the first 6 months. And these figures reflect some of the statistics from the previous year. So this was happening under your watch as well.
Yes, and I acknowledge that, and you're being quite fair to your listeners by pointing that out. And I don't think everything that happened on the 4th of July. I think the government's made it worse. If you look at things like the non-dom changes, they've significantly expanded the scope of taxation. If you look at the vibe that they're doing in terms of putting up national insurance taxes, freezing indefinitely, it turns out, income tax. So I think there is no one thing. I think we should be fair-minded. I don't think there is a single one measure that will change this. But some of the senses of taxes only ever going up, and some of the challenges that have been going on for quite a long time, but under a Labour mayor in London, your listeners will recognise. I don't think it's necessarily always representative, but when we got the Mexican government warning people not to have their phones out on the street in public, there is a challenge for our great capital city.
But the last time this happened was in the 1970s, when there really was a real brain drain, particularly to the United States. Taxes then, certainly the high rates of tax were far higher than they are here now. And it was only when Margaret Thatcher got in and turned things around, not just on the economy, but I think in terms of the national mood. So whoever wins the next election is going to have a real challenge here, aren't they? We did a special cross question last night on business, and we had 4 business people, and they were all saying the same thing. But no politicians, certainly in this government, seem to understand that they need to create the conditions for an entrepreneurial society to re-emerge. And I think that's got a lot to do with this, that people don't see that in this country anymore.
100%, and we're aficionados inside the Beltway. You may or may not have seen my speech to the Conservative Party conference, which was all about creating a new generation of entrepreneurs. And of course, the government doesn't create entrepreneurs, it merely creates the conditions to do that. I've always talked about the importance of wealth creators and defended those that, yes, are significantly wealthy in this country, but also contribute a huge amount, pay tens, often hundreds, sometimes thousands of times the rate of tax of other people. And the Conservative Party needs to be a voice for that. We need to, in my view, project a positive vision about how great our country can be again. Poland, a country that emerged from 40 years under the yoke of state socialism, is on track to overtake us on a GDP per capita basis. That means they'll be more prosperous than people in Britain will be. If I'm lucky, maybe I can retrain as a plumber and find work in Poland, because the drain, the flow will go in the other direction. Now, again, I'm not saying that we as a party will have a monopoly on that, but we need people, ideally with a business background, people in politics who are able to articulate what it is that's going to allow this country to grow again. If you don't grow, it's not surprising, ultimately, some of the best and brightest will look for opportunities overseas, and it's never been easy to do so.
That's Andrew Griffith, the Conservative Shadow Business Secretary. How big a problem is this, or how big a problem could it be if we are losing our best and brightest people to other countries over the next 10 years? I mean, how is that going to affect not just our economy, but our society? Other countries have gone through this in the past. You think of the Republic of Ireland, over the years, a lot of Irish teenagers, 20-somethings, have thought, well, the only way we're going to succeed is if we leave Ireland and come to Britain, or other countries, but predominantly Britain. I sense that's not happening so much now, and in fact I think a lot of Irish people, young Irish people who've come to this country, are actually heading back to Ireland because they see prospects brighter there. But Ireland, and in fact a lot of other countries, experience the same problems as we do. When I was in Dublin recently, talking to people about the cost of housing, particularly in Dublin, I mean, it's as bad as London. And I mean, all capital cities are going through this, but why do you think it is that it seems actually worse here? The British 18 to 30-year-olds, I think, are taking possibly a different line from those maybe in France, Germany, Spain, Italy. Why is that? And what problems could that lead to in the future? How can we persuade people that the future is very bright here? And I think it is. You look at the opportunities that graduates have, or anybody in their 20s have in this country now, compared to when I was in my 20s in the 1980s. I think the opportunities are fantastic in this country. But yes, the cost of living, on average, is so much higher. And I think that is putting people off, particularly living and working in London. But it's not all about London, is it? 0345 6060 973. 17 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why is there delay?
Straight to the point.
This government is unravelling everywhere you look.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
How can that make sense to anyone?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
This could be the best Christmas ever. Christmas Cash Call is here with a life-changing £100,000 to be won. Enter this week's draw before 5 p.m. Friday and you could get a call with £100,000. Christmas Cash Call. Text radio to 82200 to enter now. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network charge. 18 plus, UK only, global network competition. Full rules and free entry at christmascashcall.com.
Welcome on board this LNER service from London King's Cross to Edinburgh. My name's Paul, your train manager today, and hang on, is that a Scrabble tournament in Coach J? Yes, G with an X is a word. Right, we're cruising at 125 miles per hour, same speed this lad next to me is typing. Someone's on a roll. The cafe bars in Coach G if you fancy a brew, or if you're mid-box set binge, just order through the QR code at your seat. We'll deliver it. So sit back and enjoy your journey. With LNER, it's freedom all the way.
Leading Britain's conversation. Ian Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
The road.
90 minutes past 7. Mark says, the high emigration is exactly as Rio Ferdinand described. High tax take and poor quality public services. It only means that it's being poorly managed. Why would people want to work to give it all away and get poor service in return? That's from Mark in Edinburgh. There is part of me that thinks this is really overdone, because a lot of people get fantastic service from the NHS. Yes, it has its problems, of course it does, as any organisation that size would. And it does receive a huge amount of public money each year, and should do better in how it spends it. But I wonder, again, whether the grass is always greener on the other side. You look at a lot of the health services in Europe, they're no better than ours. I mean, going back to the subject of Ireland, I mean, many people in the Republic of Ireland would give a lot to have the kind of health service that we have. I don't have experience of countries outside Europe particularly, but everyone says, oh, well, a lot of doctors and nurses are going to Australia because they're paid a lot more. Yeah, I'm not sure the Australian health service is all it's cracked up to be. Sometimes I think we talk down our public services. You look at public transport in London, which by and large, I think, is fantastic. Yes, of course things go wrong, but things go wrong in any transport network. It kind of goes with the territory. But you look at the tube network, how apart from when they're on strike, I mean, how many problems does the tube network generally have? Not that many. A lot of the train lines that come into London, and indeed in the rest of the country, by and large, operate quite well. They could be better, completely agree with that. And I'm not pretending that all is rosy, but to pretend that the state of our public services would mean that people would think I'm going to leave the country. Now, fine, if you think the cost of living here overall is too high and that you can get a better standard of living in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, wherever, fine, make that decision. But sometimes I think we just are moaning minis, aren't we? I'm sure that Nick in Malden is not a moaning mini though. Hello, Nick.
How are we doing? You all right?
All right, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I once absolutely loved it here. I did. I thought it was the greatest country in the world, and that's the truth. I really, really did. But I think in recent years, it's just got so bad that really people have just got no choice but to leave. And I say that to everybody that can. If you can afford to go, go. Because I'm thinking about it myself.
Where are you thinking of going?
I would either go to Italy or I would go to Malta. I've been both places quite a lot on holiday and I love both of them. But obviously, as you know, they're not far away from each other. But the way you've got to look at it, you mentioned that earlier on in life you went to Germany for a year. You compare a bottle of Coca-Cola in Germany, so a 2 litre bottle of Coca-Cola in Germany, price-wise, to the price that it is in the UK. And I think people would be absolutely shocked at the price difference. You just can't live here. We're not living, we're just existing. If you wanted to start a family here as a young person, wanted to get a mortgage, you would have to have £5,000 to £6,000 a month coming into the house in order to live comfortable. It's impossible. Impossible. You just can't do it. By the time you go and get a mortgage, average mortgage on a 3-bedroom house in Essex is £1,500 to £2,000 a month. Then you go and get a car on finance. Then you get a shopping bill every month at £250 to £300 a week on shopping for you and your wife and 2 kids. Then you've got your gas, you've got your electric, council tax. You just add it up yourself. Like I said, you're looking at £5,000 to £6,000 a month. Time you buy clothes and you want to go away on holiday, you've got no chance.
How much research have you done into what it would cost in Italy?
If you went to, I would like to go more southern rather than northern, but northern Italy, you would be shocked. You could buy somewhere in northern Italy for under £50,000.
You sure?
100%. It wasn't so long ago that Italy was saying that you could buy a house for next to nothing if you had an agreement to redecorate and make it look livable within 3 years. They were more or less giving them away. But I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong or prove me wrong.
Well, I can't prove you wrong, but my instinct is that most European countries, in some ways, the cost of living is actually higher than it is here. I think if you look at food prices in general, they are, I think, a bit lower here than in most other countries. What you said about bottles of Coca-Cola is certainly my experience. Admittedly, I lived in Germany a long time ago, so maybe it's changed now. But I don't get the feeling that generally food prices in most European countries are a lot lower than here. I mean, somebody's just texted me, come to New Zealand, where the cost of living is 3 times higher than in the UK. Now, that may be because of the remoteness of it, I don't know.
I can believe that. I can believe in some countries, I know obviously places like Norway or whatever, they've got a higher cost of living, I understand that. But my father, unfortunately, has just recently passed away from cancer, and when he wasn't feeling too well, before he even knew he had cancer, I took him to the A&E, and it was about 7 o'clock in the evening when I took him. About 1 o'clock in the morning, about 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning, I took him for a scan on his stomach, because that was where he was feeling a bit of pain. About 5 o'clock in the morning, he got called into the doctor's office and told that there was more or less positive that it was cancer, had no beds available, and left him waiting in A&E, just amongst everybody else, just in the waiting area for A&E, and he was sitting there till 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day before they had a bed. So, sorry, you got cancer, you're going to sit out there with the rest of the people till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you've got another 10 hours.
I had a similar experience. I wasn't suspected of having cancer, but then again, I didn't know. I had this terrible pain in my side. It turned out to be a gallbladder issue, and I had to have that out. But I went in at 8 o'clock at night. They diagnosed it by 10 or 11, and they said they wanted to keep me in. And in the end, I had to sit in a chair for the whole night. Now, they didn't have a bed. They couldn't manufacture one out of thin air. And I wasn't in a condition where it was life-threatening. It was uncomfortable, but it wasn't life-threatening. And I sort of was fairly philosophical about it. But the rest of the care I had in the 5 days I was there was fantastic. But we all judge these things by our own anecdotal experiences, don't we? What would push you over the edge, though?
There's so many things to consider. I'm not one of these people that go on about illegal immigrants, immigration this, immigration that, blah blah blah. Listen, some of them people have come from war-torn countries. Do you know what I mean? There's always somebody more worse off than you out there. But let's take this for instance. During COVID, when there was a lockdown, they didn't want anybody on the streets whatsoever during COVID. All the homeless people that were on the streets were put into, let's say, some kind of sheltered housing, because they wanted them off the streets. As soon as COVID was over, they threw them back out on the streets again. And then now, say, for instance, you've got these people coming over on the boats, and as soon as they're coming over on the boats, they're being housed straight away in hotels. But some of them people that are homeless are veterans that have fought for the country. But yet, as soon as COVID was finished, they've been tossed out on the street again.
Yeah, and that proved that homelessness can actually be solved. Mick, thank you very much indeed. Let's move on to Amelia in Worthing. Hi, Amelia.
Hello, and it's very nice to speak to you, and a really interesting previous caller who I can only echo everything that he said, really. And I was agreeing with a lot of the interesting points he made. And actually, I think one of the biggest things is the values, like where are our values? There's so much hype on immigration and things like that at the moment, and it just feels so negative. But anyway, I called really to say that I'm a 41-year-old. My husband's a year younger than me. We have a near 4-year-old little boy. We've worked all our lives in the emergency services. We live in a modest new build house that we fought to get so we could have a garden for our little boy. And we're just constantly feeling excluded and constantly feeling like we don't see each other, like And we're in good jobs, we're earning good money, but we can't afford to go on holiday, for example. We're scrimping and scraping, cutting nephews out of Christmas presents and stuff like that. It just feels like there's squeeze coming from everywhere since COVID, which obviously tied in with us having a child, but we've gone from being really comfortable to watching our money. We're month by month, basically.
What part of your household budget do you think has been most severely impacted over the last 3 years?
Energy, food.
Yeah.
And mortgage payments.
Well, mortgage payments should have come down a little, of course.
Well, ours definitely went up. I mean, we moved from a 2-bedroom flat, but we did move just out of Worthing to Lancing, which is just down the road, but obviously slightly cheaper, because the other thing that happened is a lot of, even pals of my own, I work in London, I work in the theatre world, a lot of people moved from London down to Worthing for bigger houses, nice garden, nice surroundings. We're so lucky in this area, but that did drive our house prices up. I mean, I sometimes drive in and park at Morden, and you can easily find a house the same price in Morden now as you can in Worthing. It's crazy, the house prices here. And I'm not whinging. I'm so grateful for my little life. But my husband's from Scotland. We've been looking at going to Scotland, free university if our child wants to go to university. Some of your rates, you don't pay water rates, and they pay it in other ways, but just the quality of life, if you can buy a same-size property for nearly half the price. And then, I don't know, what does that mean? Does that mean we can work less hours and be more present with our child? I really have a chip on my shoulder.
Well, you shouldn't have a chip on your shoulder, because both of you are successful. You've made choices where, I mean, in a sense, the choices you've made, you've kind of deliberately increased your cost of living by moving to a bigger property. You work in London, so inevitably there are costs to that. That's the choice that you make, and I'm not criticising you at all, really. But
yes and no, because my industry is in the heart of London, so I don't have a lot of choice. And I did previously run a business at a local level in that same field, and I didn't like that, and I didn't want to work 20 hours a day anymore. I'm quite level-headed about it. I'm not throwing my toys out the pram. I just look back on my childhood with my mum at home, and my dad's income was enough, and we had a really privileged upbringing. But most children at school, they had a parent at home, and you could live off of one wage, and you just can't do that. And I do. That's the chip.
Well, I think that is a fair point to make, and I think you're right. I mean, I'm not much older than you, but I sort of related to what you said about your upbringing. Mine was exactly the same. But I don't think it's much different in many other countries, if I'm honest. Unless you go to somewhere that is an underdeveloped country, sure, where you can. I mean, some friends of mine emigrated to Belize once because they thought they could have a much higher standard of living, but ended up coming back after 5 years because it wasn't quite what they thought it was going to be like. And I think people do tend to think sometimes the grass is always greener on the other side, and then sometimes find that it isn't.
I agree with you. And the other place we've been looking at, or we've just started really looking at house prices, like the more gritty stuff now, rather than just saying, shall we look at this, is Australia, because my husband is in the emergency services. They do offer a lot of lucrative deals for serving emergency workers to go over to Australia, and we have had a few friends that have done that with their young families, and we've been watching the programs about it, raising questions. We're now just opening to the possibility.
Well, I'll tell you what, do your research into the housing market in Australia, because in some of the big cities it's actually worse than it is in London, believe it or not. So again,
imagine
you need to do that research certainly before you get too far down the road. Amelia, thank you very much indeed. Well, two really interesting calls there. We'll come to some more in a moment, and we'll find out about the US House of Representatives. They've just begun voting on publishing the Epstein files. It's 7:33. News headlines on LBC with Amelia Cox.
It looks like the US House of of Representatives will vote in favour of a bill to release all files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Earlier, survivors of Epstein spoke outside the US Capitol and called for Donald Trump to show leadership. Meanwhile, the US President has defended the Saudi Crown Prince after he was asked about the death of Jamal Khashoggi at the White House. Mr. Trump says Prince Mohammed bin Salman knew nothing about it after the journalist was killed by Saudi agents in 2018. In China has described claims spies working for Beijing are targeting MPs on LinkedIn as pure fabrication and malicious slander. 2 headhunters have been identified who are trying to recruit people working at Parliament to access sensitive information. LBC weather, showers moving southwards through England and Wales tonight. Some sleet and snow over hills in the north, a low of -5 degrees.
This is LBC.
Look, saying thanks isn't your strong point, Dad. But it doesn't mean I don't want to say it. Like telling you thanks for being, well, my dad. Saying thanks for keeping my chair at the dinner table. I only moved out 8 years ago. For teaching me how to load a dishwasher correctly. No, I was alright, mate. And for all the advice I never listened to. But you know what I'm like. I never get round to saying it.
This Christmas, if you can't find the words, find the gift. John Lewis.
Welcome on board this LNER service from London King's Cross to Edinburgh. My name's Paul, the train manager today, and is that Scrabble tournament in coach here? Yes, G with an X is a word. Right, we're cruising at 125 miles per hour. Same speed this lad next to me is typing. Someone's on a roll. The cafe bars in coach G if you fancy a brew, or if you're mid-box set binge, just order through the QR code you see. We'll deliver it. So sit back and enjoy your journey. With LNER, it's freedom all the way.
We had our smart meter installed a year ago, and it's made things so much easier. Not having to submit meter readings or having to deal with estimated bills is great.
A smart meter sends meter readings direct to your energy supplier. It means you get accurate bills, not estimated bills, and you don't even need an internet connection. Call your energy supplier to request a smart meter today.
Real testimonials voiced by actors. Eligibility may vary.
Ian Dale on LBC.
7:36 on LBC. Lots of calls coming in on whether you think the grass is greener on the other side, whether you're considering moving from the UK elsewhere in the world. Why would you do so? And if you have done so, and you are living elsewhere, and you found that it's actually brilliant, or you slightly regret it, I'd love to hear from you too. But first, let's cross to the United States, because the House of Representatives has begun voting on publishing the Epstein files. Professor Jennifer Taub joins us, US political commentator and legal scholar, who is the author of the book Big Dirty Money, Making White-Collar Criminals Pay. Jennifer, very good evening to you. What are we expecting to happen tonight in the House of Representatives?
Well, right now, as you and I are speaking, Ian, the House is voting on this Epstein File Transparency Act. And based on the numbers I'm looking at on my screen, it has passed already. The numbers are still going up, but 374 of the 435 members of the House have approved it. Even though time is out, I guess they're still voting, and so far nobody has voted against it. The number is really significant, Ian, because should this also pass our other chamber in the Senate, it would go to Donald Trump's desk. And the vote now that I mentioned, now it's up to 381, is well past what's known as a veto-proof majority, right? They need 66%. So this has passed with flying colors in the House. Not a surprise, because as you know, at the 11th hour, Donald Trump put his finger up to the wind, saw which way it was blowing, and knew he was going to lose the vote. So now he's acting like he is for it.
And it's as simple as that. There was no other reason for him to change his mind.
None at all.
So what happens now? So this goes through. Does that mean that every single piece of evidence, every single email is going to be in the public domain?
As if, and let me just say, I'm sure you're aware of this, this is all a subterfuge. If Donald Trump, at this point, has decided he wants everything out there, he doesn't need an act of Congress. He can just tell his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to release all this. But to be clear, if he's going to go this route, the next step would be passing in the Senate, by a supermajority, so that would be, you would need, I guess that's 67 of the 100, and then Donald Trump would have to sign it. However, to be clear, you're asking, even if it passed, what would come into the public domain? The statute, as it's written now, says all records, all documents, all materials in the Department of Justice's possession that relate to the investigation of and prosecution of Epstein. And this would include things about Ghislaine Maxwell, flight logs, photos, and the like. But to be clear, of course, this law, even on its face, has a giant loophole, which would be that the Department of Justice would be permitted to withhold any information that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. And just last week, Donald Trump was giving Pam Bondi, the AG, orders or instructions via his True Social account to investigate certain individuals that he considers his political enemies who were friends with in a clear in the file. So there are so many ways that Donald Trump can pretend that he wants transparency, but which he can delay release of information to protect whoever he is trying to protect.
Who is most quaking in their boots at this? I mean, there are various people that we know of that have been implicated in the Epstein files. Obviously, the prince formerly known as Andrew is one. Former ambassador Lord Mandelson is another. Bill Clinton is another. Apparently was quite close to Jeffrey Epstein. So who do you think has most to lose from this? And Donald Trump himself, maybe?
I think the person who should be most concerned right now is Ghislaine Maxwell, because she is in a prison, and as there's not a great track record of people associated with this scandal living. Jeff Epstein somehow died. Some people believe he was murdered. Other people just believe he wasn't watched over well and committed suicide. But of course there was Jean-Luc Brunel, who was friends with Jeff Epstein and had his own issues, as you know, probably in Europe. And he was in prison and also died in prison. So if I were Ghislaine Maxwell, I would be quite concerned that some of the people who don't want this coming out and are worried about her, okay, that's one thing. But in terms of the other men, I think that Hugh Barak should be quite concerned. He's mentioned in Virginia Roberts Giuffre's posthumous autobiography. I do think the ones you've mentioned, of course, Bill Clinton. Now, Larry Summers should be concerned. Maybe the worst about him is out already because of the emails we saw from the estate, but it can't be good for him. The fact that he's immediately stepped back from, oh, by the way, for those who might not know, Larry Summers is a former Treasury Secretary, but most well known for being the president of Harvard University and a leading economics scholar. And he's now stepped back from public life because up until the day before Epstein was arrested most recently, Larry was seeking relationship advice from Jeff Epstein while Larry was married about a woman, a young woman he was targeting who was supposedly a mentee of his for whom he wanted to, quote-unquote, get horizontal with and thought the only way she'd be willing is if it was sort of coercive and she thought her career or his feedback or her access to important people depended on it. So that's not a great look for him. So I imagine there could be worse information in the files about him, given he is someone Donald Trump has mentioned. But of course, Donald Trump obviously has something deep to hide. He was friends with the man.
But to be fair to Donald Trump, as we always try to be, he did actually break off his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, didn't he?
He absolutely did. And the deep question is when and why. If we take Donald Trump at his word, and that it wasn't related to some dispute over a house they were both bidding for, even taking Donald Trump at his word, it contradicts his cover story. Most recently, Donald Trump said, and this comports with what Jeff Epstein said in the emails, Donald Trump has said, I cut him off because he was recruiting young girls from Mar-a-Lago. And Epstein...
Which is true.
Which is true. And certainly Ghislaine's denied it, but we know that she recruited, I believe that she, based on her her conviction and based on what we've read elsewhere, that she did recruit a 16-year-old. This was Virginia from Morocco. But in that email, I think it was an email to Michael Wolff, maybe, he said, of course Donald Trump knew about the girls. He told Ghislaine to stop. So keep in mind that recently, and over the many past years, Donald Trump has said, I had no idea what he was doing. I didn't know. But now he's admitting that he knew, and he's claiming that he knew as much immediately, around 2000 when Virginia was recruited. So these things only point to Donald Trump knowing and continuing to associate with him even after that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. That's Professor Jennifer Torp there. The voting has ended. It's 427 votes to release the files, 1 against. We'll try and find out who that is. I can't imagine why there would have been 1 against, so apparently a Republican congressman. Right, we're going to come back to your calls on whether you think that it would be a good idea to leave the country, because over 50% of 18 to 30-year-olds are actually having that thought, and over 16,500 millionaires are intending to leave the country this year. How serious do you think that will be for our country? 0345 6060 973. And just to tell you one cross question from 8, we have the Labour MP Alex Sobel, we have Sir John Hayes, the Conservative MP for South Holland and the Deepings, Alice Dent, the opinion and features editor of City AM, and Matthew Hobb, the political commentator and co-host of the Political Frenemies podcast. It's 7:45.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Don't know about you, the more I see of her and the more I hear from her, the more I warn Shabana Mahmood.
I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. And like him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly told to go back home.
Is it that bad out there? Dilip is in Leicester. You're on the radio.
India came to England in 71 from Uganda with the British passport. On a quite big social media page, I often get abuse on there. My daughter works in criminal defence law. She gets it very regularly.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free global player app or the new LBC app.
Do you ever feel like getting back under your duvet in the middle of the day? Ferroglobin is a great-tasting liquid formula with iron, which contributes to the reduction of tiredness and fatigue and normal formation of hemoglobin. Ferroglobin from Vitabiotics at Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
For the nappies, peekaboos and tea parties, mess, tantrums and sleepless nights. All those yo-yos, action figures and shoulders. Lifts to mates, lifts to parties, lifts everywhere. For each and every one of those teenage years. Let's be honest, you probably owe your parents one. So tell them about pension credit. It could boost their pension income by an average of over £4,000 a year. Pension credit. Credit where credit's due. Eligibility criteria apply.
Waitrose presents
And the main event.
One cook learns that love doesn't always shout.
Enough for me.
Sometimes it whispers.
I saved your best bit, Dad.
Starring succulent #1 free-range turkey bauble, wrapped in dried cured beetroot smoked bacon, with cranberry cured pork stuffing and orange glaze.
Thanks.
Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Subject to availability and delivery slots available to order online in stores from 19th of December.
Calling all black cab drivers. Let's talk about those quieter times when your meter's taking a little nap. Why not consider Uber? We can give your meter a wake-up call. Join close to 1,000 black cab drivers already on Uber and gain access to millions of passengers at the touch of a button. Black cabs on Uber are priced by your meter, and the service fee will be no more than 5% until the end of 2025. Turn downtime into prime time. Go to uber.com/black cabs to start earning today. Terms and conditions apply.
Ian Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:48. Let's carry on with your calls about possibly emigrating. Luke is in Sydney. Hi, Luke.
Hi, Ian. How you doing?
Good, thank you. What would you like to tell me?
Yeah, I've been in Sydney now for coming up to just over a year, and I left the UK
probably about 13 months ago, 14 months ago, and just got fed up. I was living in London, half my wage every month would go on my rent. I wasn't able to save, so I'm a 27-year-old man, was trying to get onto the property ladder, but just had no chance with the job I was doing and the money I was earning, and decided to come to a better country. I mean, there was other things, not just money, you know, there was things like the weather, just the lifestyle that was really attractive about Australia, and decided to make the move with my partner. And we've now been here a year and are looking to maybe do another year and maybe another year after that. So, yeah, no regrets.
What about the housing cost in Sydney? Because that's massive, isn't it?
It's actually, I mean, I'm just on the rental market, but it's pretty similar to London. And actually, when you compare it with my wage, less of my wage each month is going on my rent. So I'm taking home more money when it comes to savings. And I'm in a pretty similar. I'm in a pretty similar apartment that I was in London, and I'm now 2 minutes from the beach. So
what's not to like?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I can wake up in the morning, go for a morning swim, and there's also just a lot of other things out here. I mean, it's a lot more of an outdoor country. So, you know, if you want to go meet up with friends, like I say, you go to the beach or you go for a barbecue. You're not going to the pub and spending £100 or £200 on a sit-down meal or, you know, even a couple of beers. So it's a lot more of an easier lifestyle, and you're not spending as much day to day as well.
I recognise your voice. You used to work on this programme, didn't you?
I did. But it was, you know, I had a job after that in the media, and a good job in Sky News, but it, you know, I wasn't earning minimum wage, but it was still cost of living under.
But I love the fact that you still think that British radio is better than Australian, which is why you're listening now.
Definitely. Well, I'd have to call in.
Well, great to hear from you, Lou. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Let's move on to Louise, who's in Shotts in Lanarkshire. Hello, Louise.
Oh, hi, Ian. Thanks for taking the call. You are every optimist, I must admit that one. I was listening to the show about half an hour ago, been out all day, and I kind of picked up on the point that you were saying that, you know, like the UK is a great place to be. There's loads of opportunities and things like this for young people. But I was listening to a phone-in on LBC the other day, I think it was over the weekend. Kind of parents and kids were phoning in, saying that, like, you know, on average, they're making like hundreds, if not thousands, of applications just to get like entry-level jobs, just because either the jobs don't fit or the competition is so high for them. So yeah, like if I were young again, then I would definitely look beyond the horizon of the UK for sunnier climates, to be honest.
Look, I'm not disputing the fact that there's a lot of competition for jobs, but there are lots of opportunities out there. It's always been the case that hundreds of people have applied for particular jobs. I remember the first proper job I got after leaving university, and I worked in Parliament for a couple of years, and then I beat 170 people to a job in political consultancy. Now, I thought that was a fluke at the time. It turned out that they thought that I knew a lot more about the Department of Transport than I really did, so I was very lucky. But I mean, it's always been the case that you've had dozens, if not hundreds, of people applying for jobs.
Yeah, but I think maybe the difference now, and listen, I am not one that easily jumps on the AI or technology bandwagon. There's quite a lot now of entry-level jobs because of AI and automation.
Well, and that is you're right, and that is going to get worse, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that'll be everywhere all over the world, won't it just be here?
No, I know, but then when I was talking to your colleague earlier, that I kind of cast my mind back to a conversation on LBC a couple of months ago, and it was talking about, like, you know, the low birth rate, and, you know, so what can we do to encourage people to have more kids? And I'm like, well, you know, the government now could spend a fortune on a range of policies to, you know, increase the birth rate, whatever. But there's nothing tying the UK when they're older, you know?
No, but that is because of the kind of world we live in now, which is, I don't know how old you are, Louise, but certainly when I was young, people were starting to travel more and live abroad more. But that has I mean, that's got sort of massively more over the past 2 or 3 decades. So I think it's just part of the times that we live in. And I'm sure that if we were on a German radio station or an Italian radio station, we'd probably be having similar debates. Louise, thank you very much indeed. Ali is in Cosholton. Hello, Ali.
Hello, Ian. How are you, mate?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Ian, I'm one of them people that has already started to move abroad. Like everybody's got their own reasons. I've got two mainly reasons. I mean, I've been in the retail my life and into investments. Now, investments in this country is not worth it at all. You've been hearing about the landlords crying, and it is factual. It is absolutely factual. I'm really struggling to keep up with the council's requirements, to keep into that law thing. You step out of line, you're going to get fined heavily. I've had it, and half of my family's gone. So hopefully by next year I'll be gone.
Wow.
Dubai.
What is the fascination with Dubai? I've never been there. I've never had any inclination of wanting to go there. But why are so many people going there? There must be.
I tell you, I speak on my behalf why I'm going. Two reasons. Firstly, it's really safe out there. You don't pay tax. Right? You're safe as a person, and your kids are safe there. And for me, Ian, this might get off topic, and you probably think we're not talking about this at this moment. Mine is, I was born in this country. I've worked from the age of 17, broken my back, and I'm a foreigner. I realised 3 years ago I'm a foreigner, mate. And that hurts.
What made you think that?
The racism. See, you know what it is? The government and people like you, I said that you're a white guy, you don't know that. You're not in our shoes. You don't know it. You could talk about it and say nice things, but do you know what it is? It's flipping us. When you get called the P word, or you get looked down at, and you're driving along and you can see them driving a nice car, you look next door and they say the P word, they're flipping us, but you can't even do anything in this country. You see where I'm coming from, the hurt? It's really annoying. I broke my back in this country.
I do see that, and you're right.
And let me tell you another thing, I'm not the only one. We've got a shortage of teachers in this country. We haven't got a shortage of teachers. Go to Dubai, Qatar, all the Irish girls, the English girls are there, living a life of luxury, getting well paid, zero tax, get their property. And do you know teachers in Dubai? They get the utmost respect. Teachers you get, we're not allowed to say anything to kids, and kids get bullied and everything and pushed around by kids. In them countries, the kids are not even allowed to say boys to the teachers. How do I know? Because a lot of my tenants, girls, were the Irish girls who come over to study teaching. Now, I'm still in contact with them, obviously. They've been with me 2-3 years, tenants. Speak to them, they say it is out of this world. There's no teachers there, this is why. There's no doctors there, they're all abroad. Nobody wants to work there.
You're obviously exaggerating, but...
No, I'm not here. No.
Well, you are. There are doctors here, obviously.
Oh, no, there's teachers there. I'm not saying that. But there's a lot there. You put it on as any teachers who've moved abroad, you see how many will call you say we are abroad. But Ian, sticking to my point, tax. Come on.
Okay, all right, Ali, thank you. Let's go to Neil, who's in Bristol. Hello, Neil.
Hi, Ian. I don't always agree with you, but I did agree with you when you prompted me to phone you, actually. And you kind of defended the country and why you didn't want to go anywhere else, And I thought, that's good. He's a good man. And I have actually lived abroad. I lived in France for 7 years. I lived in Italy for a year. And in fact, I think when you were calling earlier on, you said, obviously the grass is greener. When you go on holiday or you spend a little bit of time in the country, it seems better. But I know you're getting quite near to the end of your show, so I'll keep it short now. Isn't it ironic that we've got so many people wanting to come to Britain, and then so many people wanting to leave Britain?
I'm glad you said that, because that is a really important point to make, because it does sort of redress the balance. And I meant to make the point myself but didn't, so thank you for doing so, because we've got what was it, 2023, net 944,000 people came into this country. They're not coming here because they think we're a terrible country, are they? They're coming here because they want to live here. Thank you very much, Neil. Sorry it's so short, but as you predicted, we are at the end of the hour, because in the next hour, well, we have, as usual, on a Wednesday, Cross Question. We have Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley, Alex Sobel, Sir John Hayes, the Conservative MP for South Holland and the Deepings, Alice Denby, who is Opinion and Features Editor of City AM, and Matthew Holbert, political commentator, co-host of the Political Frenemies podcast, and also a Liberal Democrat activist. They are here to answer your questions. 0345 6060 973. You can, of course, WhatsApp on that number. You can text 84850. And, of course, you can watch us on the LBC app, Global Player, or the LBC YouTube
channel. On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock. In the last few minutes, the US House of Representatives has voted to release all files related to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. There was applause from the public gallery, which contained Epstein survivors, as all but a tiny handful of representatives agreed to the measure. US correspondent Tom Rivers says this is not the end of the matter.
Really, we're looking at the dam bursting, finally, with this vote in the House. We will then go on to the Senate. Will the bill be tampered with there or not? The Department of Justice has opened an investigation into a number of individuals that show up in these email traffics. So there could be some of that information that is withheld.
The Chinese embassy says claims Beijing is using LinkedIn to try to recruit MPs and peers as spies are pure fabrication. MI5 says 2 profiles have been identified as fronts for espionage. Former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith says China poses a threat to the British national interest.
This has been going on for some time. I mean, we've been warning about this. This is what they do everywhere they go, the Chinese Communist Party. They have this low-level attempt to get as much information as possible. They gather it in the hope of getting something very important, and they've already been accused of spying in Parliament.
The chairman of the BBC will face questions from MPs next week amid the dispute over Panorama's editing of a speech by the US president. The selective editing has already seen the Director General and Head of News resign. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 123 points at 95.52. The pound buys $1.31 and €1.13. LBC weather, rain and hill snow will continue moving south, becoming confined to southern England by dawn. Clear skies to follow, with wintry showers arriving from the north. Lows of -5 to 5 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Shabana Mahmood used some very direct language in the House of Commons. What does it tell us about the way that Labour wants to fight the threat from the far right?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app. This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Ian Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 2 minutes past 8 on Cross Question. It's Wednesday, it's the final Cross Question of the week, and in the studio with me, to my left, Sir John Hayes, Conservative MP for South Holland and the Deepings. He's never been described as on the left before. On my far left, he has Matthew Holbert, political commentator, the co-host of the Political Frenemies podcast. I wonder where he got the idea for that one from. And also Liberal Democrat activist. To my right, Alice Denby, opinion and features editor of City AM, and to her right, Alex Sobel, who is Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley. They are here to take your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp your question on that number or text 84850. More and more of you are watching us on the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel, and we encourage it because we have a beautiful panel tonight.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Ian Dale. This is LBC.
Corey informs me I just gave you some fake news. It is, in fact, of course, Tuesday, not Wednesday. But we have another one for you tomorrow as well. Right, let's start with Lee in Frankfurt, who will have an interesting question, I'm sure. Hello, Lee.
Hi, Ian. How are you doing? Sorry to disavow your beloved Brexit, but...
It's not my beloved Brexit. I just happened to vote for it.
Yeah, I know you're a big supporter, but... yeah, look, we had a number of companies, probably 17 companies in the UK that we're investors in and manage and everything else. We ended up firing 1,600 people in the UK, and 1,500 people in the EU across Germany, Poland, Romania to replace those people because we didn't get a services deal out of your Johnson Brexit, whatever you want to call it, mess that happened. So when people say they want to move overseas, Ian, my question to the panel is, how do you do that when you need a work visa?
I mean, I think the data shows that lots of people are moving overseas. So I'm not quite sure on the specifics of this, but I mean, what the data shows today is that we've had something like a 50% increase in emigration. And I'm not sure that the real thing we need to be talking about there is the visa situation. I think it's the push factors. I think it's the things that are forcing them away from the UK, which is, I think, the punitive tax regime, the complete lack of business confidence, the hiring market here is completely stalled, and just the sense that you can, if you're a young, ambitious person in the UK, you can have a better life and pay a lot less tax if you move to somewhere like Dubai, or if in the public sector a lot of doctors are moving to Australia because they have they can have a better quality of life there. So I really think it's the push factors rather than the visa difficulties that we should be talking about. But I'm very concerned to hear that you've had to fire 1,500 people. I mean, that's obviously awful. I guess it's just a combination of factors that shows that our economy is just in a really dire state at the moment.
To argue against Lee for a moment, as he, I'm sure, was expecting me to, you work in the City of London. City AM looks at what's happening in the City of London. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that employment in the City of London has actually increased by quite a bit since Brexit, which people weren't predicting by any means.
I think financial services have been one of the least badly hit by Brexit. I think you'd expect that. It's one of the premier industries that we have in Britain. It's our finest export and so on. But unemployment as a whole is down by something like 5%, and it's not fair to say that the economy is going gangbusters. I think also, if you talk to anybody involved in business and entrepreneurship, the sense of business confidence is in a really bad state. Nobody is more committed to the growth agenda than someone who's built a business here in Britain. But anyone you talk to thinks that this is not a government who backs entrepreneurship, that our growth prospects are absolutely dire, that it's more expensive and harder, and there's more red tape about hiring new people. So jobs are not in a good state, albeit that our amazing financial services is robust.
Alex Sober.
Well, I think Lee got it right, really, that because of Brexit, many UK companies have had to relocate, even things that didn't need to happen because of Brexit. For instance, European music touring, companies that do to take live musicians in the buses or the equipment relocated to Europe because they could not operate cross-border. So there's really clear to me that business relocated and people have followed the business as well. So UK workers, particularly in creative industries, in technology, etc., are excellent, but they'll follow where the cutting edge is. And the fact that we've got these huge trade barriers to Europe now are the reason people are leaving.
It's more complicated than that, though, isn't it? Because you've got all sorts of different factors here. That you've got the sort of the fact that we live in a much more globalised world. It's much easier to travel now that compared to when I lived abroad for a year when I was 18 in 1980, and I was one of the few to do so, having a gap year. Now lots of people do it now. But restrictions for people to live in different countries have changed over the years. It's not just as simple.
Well, I mean, there are obviously lots of benefits. You're under 35. We have a youth worker visa agreement and have for a long time, so it's a cross-party thing with Canada, with Australia, with New Zealand, and lots of young people go and come back. restricting people coming here so much more.
15 million people experienced an issue with their most recent parcel delivery. Late arrivals are items being left in insecure locations were among the most common issues. Yodel came last in Citizens Advised League table. Royal Mail came out top. In the city, a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 1 at 95.55. The pound buys $1.31 and a euro 13. LBC weather, dry, cold and sunny for many. Some wintry showers for the far north of Scotland. A high of 6 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Dominic Ellis.
Sounds like Arjun is going to wake up feeling fresh. And it's a good job. Because he's got a big presentation to nail just down the road. Get better sleep for your money. Book your next work stay at Premier Inn. Breakfast subject to availability. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 3 minutes after 10. A very good morning indeed to you. It's probably my second favourite, but we've never done it before on the programme, as in memories from my school days that informed the way I do my job today. You're familiar with What Was It Like? I'm not telling the whole story, but it underpins the philosophy, if we dared to be grand enough to suggest that this programme, this radio entertainment has anything akin to a philosophy. What was it like? Is a crucial part of the time we spent together, because whatever the subject is, if somebody has lived it, their recollections, their descriptions of what it was like. I don't know if you were listening yesterday to that extraordinary woman who described leaving, was it Sammy in Leeds, described leaving her husband and the way her life bloomed and blossomed as a consequence of that. It was always going to be a million times more compelling and more interesting than people ringing in with an opinion about the subject that was under discussion. Well, maybe not always, but most of the time. What was it like is the question that brings the best possible responses. But on a much lower level, questions to which the answer used to be duh. Do you remember? You remember that? Someone would, you'd ask a question like, why does that happen? And someone would go, duh, as if everybody should know the answer, as if it was blooming obvious, as if it was crystal clear why something happens, why we do something, why X equals Y plus 2, whatever it might be. That if you ask a stupid question, if you're anything even remotely close to my age, you would answer duh. Duh brain, I think, is the noun that came from the sound effect. You would be adjudged a duh brain if you asked something stupid. You see, foolishly, to knit these two things together, I think that we regarded the lad at school who coined the phrase, what was it like? I think we regarded him as a bit of a duh brain, but as we've discussed many times in the past, in fact, that's a question of such extraordinary perspicacity that we don't notice its brilliance at the time. And I love questions to which the answer is duh. So Mystery Hour, which we do every Thursday on this programme, so popular it's spawned its own board game, was born in the space usually occupied by the bleeding obvious. I think one of the very first questions that made me think maybe we could do something every week that addresses the sublime, the silly and the serious. I think one of the very first questions we ever did was, why is gold valuable? To which you could be forgiven for responding, duh, you duh brain, O'Brien, James O'Duh brain. But why is gold valuable? See? It's not immediately obvious. Don't ring in, that's not the phone. I don't know whether we will reach 11 o'clock this morning and conclude that this was a question of similar layers, a question that lends itself to similar sort of contemplations. But leaving aside the rather obvious question of whether it's a good idea to tell the world that we're not ready to defend ourselves, which is the conclusion of a year-long inquiry by the Commons Defence Committee, warning that Labour is moving at a glacial pace in the face of renewed threats from Russia and China. Also failing to meet our NATO Article 3 defence obligations to maintain and develop individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. Now, I don't think it addresses the prospect or the possibility of a sort of an actual invasion. But here we are. We are not able to defend ourselves from, I guess, what you might call state-sanctioned terror attacks, or perhaps the kind of thing that we've witnessed in Poland, where people have, fans of Russia, fans of Vladimir Putin, have been trying to commit sabotage on Polish territory. So these tentacles reach far. But I was sitting here thinking, what am I going to ask you this morning? Am I going to ask you whether you are frightened of being invaded? Whether you are frightened of being invaded? Do you actually... There was a thing last year, I don't know if you remember it, when I didn't get my head around this, I've got to be honest with you. It was one of those things that didn't... I mean, I was aware of it, but I did not understand it. There was a thing last year where young men, apparently, were constantly thinking about the Roman Empire. Do you remember this? It was a meme, it was a craze, it was a fad. Everywhere you went, people would... How many times a day do you think about the Roman Empire? And I never got that. I sat here feeling a bit like my dad did when I got off the bus at Digbeth coach station in Birmingham, wearing my recently purchased Pride and Joy of jeans that already had holes in them that I bought, I think, from Hyper on Kensington High Street. My dad was just absolutely baffled. He goes, so you've done what, son? You bought someone else's old caps that have already got holes in them. I said, designer holes, Dad. Designer holes. And he was, I mean, probably a slight combination of love and befuddlement. But he was just completely baffled. It was as if there were no words in the English language that I could deploy to help him understand why I'd spent, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, I think we may have spent more money on somebody else's old Levi's 501s with holes in them than we would have been required to spend on a brand spanking new pair straight out the box. I may have misremembered that, but they were no bargain, especially not from a lad up on the bus from Kidderminster, with his hard-earned pocket money clutched in his sweaty paw. And then I hopped off the National Express at Digbeth coach station, and my dad was picking me up. And I was wearing these jeans that I just adored. I thought I looked like the absolute bomb, like a cross between Matt Goss and George Michael. My dad, I went to his grave, bless him, utterly baffled by the notion of buying jeans that somebody else's old jeans that already had holes in them. And I felt like that when this thing last year went around the world, about how often men are supposed to think about the Roman Empire. Because I really like history, and very occasionally, if I see a very, very straight road, you know, the kind of road that could have gone round a hill, or I always think of Stokenchurch at this point, or could have gone through a hill, not perhaps in Roman times, because they'd have had to do it by hand, but, you know, post-industrial revolution, they could have blown a cutting through the middle of a hill. But the Romans just did, this is what we were taught at school, I think it's true, the Romans just did a big straight road. They wouldn't go through anything. They would just, heads down, tools out, build a road in a great... So whenever I find myself on an uncommonly straight road, I occasionally think of the Roman Empire. And those are the reasons, in a very roundabout way, why I like the questions to which the answer appears to be blindingly obvious. So today I was going to ask you how often you thought about being invaded, in the way that everybody got asked last year how often they thought about the Roman Empire. But I don't know that anybody lies awake in bed at night genuinely worrying about what would happen in the event of an invasion. As a kid I did. As a kid reading Commando comics. Remember Commando comics? For you Fritz, the war is over. All sorts of lovely stories. Do you think the Defence Secretary does? Do you think John Healey lies awake in bed wondering what would happen if, I don't know, if they arrived at Dover tomorrow? Who's they? Be the Russians, right, these days? The Russians arrived at Dover tomorrow. I think he does. I think he does worry about it. I think he may even be talking about it at the moment. But I don't know anyone else who does. And the realistic prospect. When I was growing up, it was always the Nazis. Do you want to know something funny? I don't know why I've dug up my school days today. Must be something in the water. We had air rifles in locked cupboards at my prep school. Okay, so it was a very old-fashioned posh prep school, and we used to do shooting with the major, former military, would teach us shooting with air pistols. And in my fevered imagination, aged about 8 or 9, if the Nazis invaded, I was going to run to the old gym, it was called, like a wooden building, probably dating back to roughly the Second World War, and I was going to crack out with air rifles and lead my mates into the woods where we would build a redoubt and set up a final line of defence as the Nazis made their way through Chattersley Corbett. They would meet their they would meet their comeuppance when they got into the woods behind my old school. That's what I would do. So that's the last time I genuinely thought about the prospect of this country being invaded. Poland, breaking news, is closing its last operating Russian consulate. The threat is growing, the threat is new. But instead of asking you whether or not you genuinely fear invasion, well, I'll ask that, but I don't think anyone's going to be worth listening to. Can I say that? 0345 6060 973. If you're genuinely worried, for good reasons, not just because you're paranoid, about the prospect of these shores being breached, these islands being invaded. I can tell you that John Healey, who is speaking now at Downing Street, has said that a Russian spy ship is on the edge of UK waters north of Scotland, having entered the UK's wider waters over the last few weeks. This is a vessel designed for gathering intelligence and mapping our undersea cables. We deployed a Royal Navy frigate and RAF planes to monitor and track this vessel's every move, during which the Yantar directed lasers at our pilots. So Russian lasers currently directed or recently directed at British pilots. And it's the second time this year that this ship, the Yantar, has deployed to UK waters. That's obviously very serious, but I don't think it merits yet the word invasion. In many ways, if you're tracking sideline matters, war was declared years ago. War was declared in about 2014, 2015. You can see it with the way that public discourse has been completely distorted and corrupted in this country. And no one will ever know, I don't think, how much of the Britain-hating racism all over social media, whether it's pretending that London is less safe than Washington, D.C., or simply telling lies about people whose parents weren't born here. We'll never know how much of that has its seeds in Russian misinformation, but as with Brexit, we know that a lot of it does. And John Healey has just addressed Vladimir Putin directly, which I'll play for you in a moment. And then I'm going to ask you what our army is for, what our armed forces are for. Have a little listen to this very, very short clip.
So my message to Russia and to Putin is this. We see you, we know what you're doing, and if the Yantar travels south this week, we are ready.
Gosh. Was it Gavin Williamson who said that? Who was he talking about when he said they should shut up and go away? Was that Russia? It wasn't, was it? I can't be expected to remember everything, but that's the question. And it may seem silly, and that's because it may be silly, but I actually don't think it is. Here, if you're not scared already, how about try this for size? I don't think we could rely on Donald Trump's United States, could we? In the event of us facing genuine military peril. He's cozying up at the moment to the Saudi leader, believed by the American intelligence services to have greenlit the murder of a journalist in Istanbul. Donald Trump deploying all of the sort of arsenal of fake news yesterday to pretend that never happened, or that if it did, it didn't matter, and maligning the memory of Jamal Khashoggi. Again, shocked but not surprised. But what is our army for? What are our armed forces for? And this is a question which everyone should actually have a view on, even though you've never really thought about it before. If you've served, I'm really interested in your answers. Maybe I'm demonstrating a degree of naivety and you will all give the same answer. But I don't fear invasion in the way that I did growing up, oddly. If you were born in the 70s like I was, you never really thought that you were growing up in the shadow of the Second World War, because it was much closer to the Second World War when I was born than we are than I am to when I was born, if you see what I mean. 53 years old, 53 years since I was born, but if you were born in 1972, then the Second World War was 30 years ago. Less than 30 years ago. It's crazy if you're my age to reflect upon that simple chronological fact. So we did physically grow up in the shadow of the Second World War, and so you grew up 70s, maybe 80s, conscious of the possibility of invasion, aware of the Second World War, aware of Dunkirk and D-Day and all the sort of great signposts of success during that period. But I've never thought about it since. And if we're not in the business, and then you've got the Falklands, so the tiny number of territories over which we still hold sway that would need to be defended in the event of a foreign invasion. I'm not suggesting for a minute that they don't merit the existence of the armed forces, but it's a massive trade-off. What are our armed forces for? 03456060973. For the avoidance of doubt, I am as dewy-eyed and irrational as the next man when it comes to our armed forces and the men and women who serve in them. I just sometimes like asking strange questions. And this is a really good one. What are they actually for? 03456060973. And of course it can be negative as well. I mean, to suggest for a minute that this will be an unalloyed cavalcade of compliments. It could be negative. You could say it's some form of imperial hangover. A reminder of the days when we mattered a lot more than we do now. Have we needed an army since Suez? Have we needed an army since the Falklands? Have we needed an army since Hiroshima? I don't know. That's why I like these questions. I love the questions that we don't have obvious answers to. But hopefully we have some answers. So, what are our armed forces for? And how concerned should we be that they are apparently not ready to defend us from foreign attack? Hit the numbers now, you will get them through. 03456060973.
LBC. With Lloyd's Home Insurance, there's £50,000 to be won when you cover the glassware no one's actually allowed to use, or the garden shed, aka your fortress of calm. Rated excellent on Trustpilot, you can be confident with your cover when you take out a new home insurance policy and be in for a chance to win £50,000. Get a quote with Lloyd's today. Buy a new home insurance policy direct from us by the 31st of December 2025. Offer T's and C's apply. Policy terms, limits and exclusions apply.
So, what's on your to-do list today? Why don't you check if you're eligible for pension credit? It tops up your pension income and also opens up help with heating bills, council tax and more. Search pension credit on gov.uk or call 0800 99 1234. There's nothing to lose. Check today. Pension credit. Credit where credit's due. Eligibility criteria apply.
For people living with dementia, Christmas can be confusing, overwhelming, heartbreaking. Families are often left to cope alone. But you can help a family reimagine Christmas. Donate to Alzheimer's Society and you can help provide practical support, expert advice and crucial companionship this Christmas. It will take a society to beat dementia, and we can't do it without you. Search Alzheimer's Society and donate today.
This is LBC. Message James O'Brien on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
20 minutes after 10. This is not a drill. UK forces hit by lasers while tracking Russian spy ship on edge of UK waters is a real and live headline. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, currently describing the action as deeply dangerous, and it coincides with the culmination of a year-long inquiry into the readiness of our armed forces, and the short answer is that we ain't ready for much. And in framing the question of why or whether that matters in the modern world, I found myself wondering what in the modern world our armed forces are for. And that is the question that we're starting with today. So feel free to answer it. Mick's in Bournemouth. Mick, what do you reckon?
Oh, well, it's, good morning, James. First time caller. I mean, it's a multifaceted answer as well, because, primarily our armed forces are for extending government policy via military means.
Yes.
But they've also got civil support duties as well in times of emergency.
Of course.
Let's cast our minds back to
COVID, where the logistic support and the medical functional support and also various other support processes were put in place.
Like what? Just remind us what? Perhaps you were about to, and I shouldn't have interrupted.
Let's look at the Nightingale hospitals.
Yes.
Let's look at the medical support staff. There was an enormous amount of military medical staff that augmented NHS staff. We also provided an enormous amount of project management, logistics support, project management skills, where NHS senior managers were very much struggling to find some kind of resolution. So there was a hell of a lot of pain where that was concerned. But we also
there's an exhibit. Sorry to interrupt, but people might like to know this. There's a specific exhibit, I think, at the National Army Museum. A project dedicated to recording. I think 20,000 soldiers were seconded, if you want, or committed to supporting public services during the coronavirus pandemic, which I mean, that hadn't popped into my head, because immediately I say, what are the armed forces for? And you immediately think fighting, don't you?
Oh, of course, yeah. Listen, it's a great trope to put a gun in the hand of every single person in uniform. Yes, okay, we have to do the dirty work when all else fails. However, we've got other duties which, you know, let's talk about humanitarian support. Whenever there's a cyclone, a hurricane, an earthquake, a tsunami elsewhere on planet Earth, there's always a grey warship there with all other Marines helicoptering ashore to provide support where that's concerned. And without any, you know, they don't even drop a stitch to do that. It's part of the function of the armed forces.
Just give us a quick bio. Give us a quick bit of why you know what you're talking about, if you don't mind.
I'm over 40 years in uniform in and around the armed forces, also in the working in the defence sector and the civilian sector as well. Right. So I've always had my eyes on the actual task in hand. So that takes me right back to the dark days of the Cold War, where I have seen face to face what the Soviet capability was then. Yes. And that is exactly what Putin is aspiring to now, to regain that capability, that kudos in the world, to put the eye of the Russian bear back into Moscow, and his intent in Ukraine is a very, very clear example of that. So we've got to be careful about what we pitch our armed forces against here. There is a capability there, and we need to match it.
And we are not matching it. Look, we can't match Russia, can we? I mean, as a member of NATO, perhaps we can, or as a member of that much mooted European army that certain people told us we should be frightened of for reasons they could never properly articulate. But we can only really match, if you like that word, Russia in company. We can't match it. Never would have been. Not since the 19th century.
But that's the whole principle of deterrence, isn't it? You know, for nearly 90 years now, we've not had a significant. We have had European wars, but we have not had a significant pan-European war for nearly 90 years now, and that has come as a result of deterrence, both conventional and nuclear, and also. Let's look towards the future. Cyber is now a massive problem. The Russians have the capability, so do the Chinese. You know, let's not just pitch this at the Russians. Let's pitch this at the Chinese, also other rogue states, to shut us down functionally. Think about the financial district. Think about the logistics capability nationwide and also throughout the world.
How does the army? How does the army play into that? Because you're picking up on a point Farah makes in a text. Hang on, I'll just read this. Physical invasion isn't what worries me. State-sponsored cyber attacks on our NHS, our financial markets, taking over our control of our airspace. That would cause much more death, economic pain and danger. Technology has made us strong, but also very vulnerable. But this is the line I want you to respond to. A physical army isn't a strong enough defence against technology terrorism.
Right, so we're fighting on two fronts, aren't we now? So, you know, if we take military history back 500-600 years, we were fighting on a different battle space. This battle space now is also physical and virtual. So, you know, I can say from experience now that all three armed forces and their reservists are very, very hot now on cyber capability. You know, they're looking at what the threat capability is of nation states who are against us, who have the capability to shut us down. Not just from a civil point of view, but also from a battle space point of view as well. So
it is something that we have got in our gun sight at the moment, for want of a better word. We're looking at this and we're training our staff and trying to gain capability to do so. Don't forget, we're in times of very tight budgets, and every single pound is fought for by our Defence Secretary.
And let me steer you now towards the more traditional territory, which would involve Professor Peter Roberts telling the inquiry that the public needed to know just how at risk they were, owing to Britain's lack of missile defence, of which the UK currently has next to nothing. Why would we need missiles?
Well, let's face it, the Soviets and the Chinese have got the capability of hypervelocity missiles. These are missiles that travel well beyond our detection rates and give us very short spaces of time to actually detect, intercept and neutralise. So we've got to be well aware about what our capabilities are with regards to defence of that, not just from an island state such as us, but also our dependencies and also our responsibilities throughout the world, and also Europe as a to basically put a bubble up. You're going to look at the capability of the Iranians to hit Israel from distance, and also vice versa, from the Houthis also to launch missiles through hundreds of miles, and we are literally a mere heartbeat away from Russian territory and Russian soil. And also we have submarines off our coast, Russian submarines who've got the capability to launch these things. There's a spy ship, as you say, which is off the coast of Scotland at the moment. That really is a bit of a red herring. We've always got spy ships around our waters, and also espionage going on at a rate anyway within our territory itself. So we're always being surveyed. But it's the missile capability which should be...
You're brilliant. I'm really hoping you haven't shut down the entire phone-in by being the best caller that we've had in a while on any issues related to this. Go on.
I've got to be honest, James, there's a lot of things that me and you would disagree on.
Don't spoil it, mate. This is a bromance. Don't spoil it.
Because what I want to close with is a question, really a personal one to you, rather than calling on your professional expertise, which is on the sort of on the gradation of peril and drawing on that 46 years you've spent in or adjacent to the armed forces. Where do we sit at the moment? What code are we in the context of how threatened you think we are as a country?
On a personal level, I'm concerned, but on a commercial
level... More than you were 10 years ago? More than you were 20 years ago?
Yes, very much so. I mean, don't forget, when the wall came down and we got the peace dividend, everybody went flabby and everybody went stale, and we put a hell of a lot of capability out because we imagined that Russia was now benign, and we imagined that China were our friends. But regimes change, and Putin's not the same person as he was 10 years ago. He's got aspirations towards re-establishing what he sees as a Soviet empire. China is now a prescient threat, and let's not denigrate any other areas around the world that do seem to threaten us. The USA can be deemed as a capability that we need to take into account. Whether or not they do decide to spin themselves out of NATO is a moot point. There are intents to do so from certain political areas within the United States government. So, we've got to be aware that one day we may have to be on our own in a European theatre and stick up for ourselves. And we've got to build capability into that, and increasing the defence budget, as much as people don't like that. They don't like that, and I can sympathise with people's points of view where that's concerned. But it's going to be a very, very bad day when everything goes very, very suddenly quiet and black in Britain because cyber capability is not being...
Because we haven't paid the bills. Because we haven't kept the subs up. We haven't paid new bills. We haven't been improving our capability. It's one of the best calls I can remember taking in a very long time. Thank you, mate. And I take some blooming amazing calls as well. But in the context of filling in gaps in our understanding of issues, that's up there with the very best of them. You don't need to be like me to contribute to this conversation. I'm interested in feelings as much as facts when we do a question like this, which is pretty much the territory of asking you what your understanding is of why we have armed forces. What do you personally think of when you think of them? Because if we haven't got the missiles to defend ourselves, we haven't got the capabilities technologically to defend ourselves, we are moving at a glacial pace in face of the renewed threats
that Russia and China represent, and we're edging ever closer to the conclusion that we might be able to answer the question of what they should be for, but they're not really fit for that particular purpose now.
10:31 is the time. Phone lines are open. Dominic Ellis has your headline.
The Defence Secretary says the UK is preparing to step up to meet a new era of hard power. John Healey's comments come as the new reports found the country is underprepared for an armed attack. Mr. Healey's also revealed that a Russian spy ship is on the edge of UK waters north of Scotland. A Royal Navy frigate and RAF planes have been deployed to monitor the Yantar's movements. Now, the rate of inflation has fallen to its lowest level for 4 months. The share dropped to 3.6% last month after the easing of gas and electricity costs. LBC weather dry, cold and sunny for many. Some wintry showers for the north of Scotland. A high of 6 degrees.
This is LBC.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. HolidayParkAdviceCentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Gift more for less when you shop at the O2 this Christmas. Save up to 70% off RRP on over 60 of their favourite designer brands, including Nike, Tommy Hilfiger, Le Creuset, the cosmetics company store, and Lindt. Ticked everyone off your list. Start the festivities at one of our 30 bars and restaurants. Enjoy a movie or get competitive with bowling, climbing, interactive football, indoor skydiving, and more. Find us at North Greenwich, just 15 minutes from central London. Search Outlet Shopping at the O2 to start planning your visit.
At Laithwaite, we go to great lengths to bring you great wine. We go far and wide. Searching high, and we mean really high. And low, and we mean stored deep underground in a cave. Off the shelf? We don't go there. Off the beaten track? We certainly go there. And the best bit is, we even come to you. Order now at laithwaites.co.uk. Laithwaite. We stop at nothing to bring you great wine.
So, what's on your to-do list today? Why don't you check if you're eligible for pension credit? It tops up your pension income and also opens up help with heating bills, council tax and more. Search pension credit on gov.uk or call 0800 99 1234. There's nothing to lose. Check today. Pension credit. Credit where credit's due. Eligibility criteria apply.
This is LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
26 minutes to 11. Forgive me, I've spoken about Russia, China, the Falkland Islands, Great Britain and the Roman Empire so far today, and I haven't mentioned Scotland. Well, excepting part of Great Britain, of course, but what an extraordinary result. In one of those games last night, even if you're not a football fan, you would have to be made of blancmange not to be moved by the emotion of the moment to Scotland. Just scored. In the opening minutes of the game, I was at a function last night, so I didn't see the highlights, but in the opening minutes of the game, you have what I think is commonly regarded as a worldie. Anything that involves an overhead kick is generally a world-class goal. And it arguably wasn't even in the top 2 goals that were scored by Scotland 30 years since they qualified for a World Cup. And they're off. They're going to the World Cup. Of course, every silver lining has a cloud. They're going to the World Cup in the United States of America, where Donald Trump has already floated the possibility of moving games in order to inflate lies about American cities. But let's not let that spoil the moment, lads. Absolute joy for all Scottish football fans. And my apologies for not mentioning it sooner. But we're talking about the war, possibly the Third World War. So in the great scheme of things, it's arguably more important. And what our armed forces are for. You know, I was being a bit... Well, I wasn't being glib, I was just being a bit daft. That old meme from last year about how often men think about the Roman Empire. Something still baffles me. But I do sometimes, not often, but I do sometimes think about the Spanish Empire and the Portuguese Empire and the Belgian Empire and even French imperial success. And the reason why I think about it is that I don't know whether those countries
are enthralled to their imperial history in the way that we often are. I think I can see the French thinking that they are a major world power, but the Spanish, I genuinely don't know. Presumably that Franco's success, if fascism is going to rise, then it has to involve some trumpeting about a mythical past. But I don't know whether other European countries that had big empires at various different points, go all the way back to the Roman Empire, I suppose, whether or not past glories pollute modern attitudes, whether or not the country thinks it's bigger and more important than it actually is because of the time when half the world was red, in the way that I think we still do. I'm certainly generationally speaking, generations older than me still hark back to, I don't know, what the map looked like at the turn of the last century rather than what the map looks like now. But we're not unique by any stretch of the imagination, and I often wonder whether or not if you were Spanish or Portuguese, then there would be significant parts of the population who sort of framed their view of where their country sits in the world today through the lens of where it sat 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago. I find that really interesting, and I think it's relevant to the question we're asking today about what our armed forces are for. You can either take the meta level or the micro level. You can go in on a personal one. Why did you join? It probably wasn't to provide logistical support to public services during a pandemic. I can't imagine there are many people in basic training now or at Sandhurst who are joining the armed forces so that they can drive fire engines in the event of another firefighter's strike. But the question of what our armed forces are for encompasses all of those things, as our last caller just demonstrated quite perfectly. Martin is in Britain. Martin, what would you like to say?
I'm probably a little bit younger than your last call. You said a bit I wanted to say, but I'll put my own take on it.
Just going to try and sort your phone line out, mate. I don't. Possibly you've gone upstairs or something since you spoke to the producer, but that's easily sorted. Let's go to Germany next. Malcolm is there in Alder. Malcolm, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello, Malcolm. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I live in Germany, as you may know.
Yes.
And just to you mentioned commando pamphlets.
Yes.
Comics.
Yes.
As I was in the army, we called them training pamphlets.
But they weren't very detailed when it comes to what you do in the event of a modern threat. But I tell you,
they were very basic, but they got the point across. Yeah, I live in Germany. We've noticed the amount of airplanes flying across military, which is the amount is, and it's worrying. Because you think, where are they coming from? And there's no information about what's happening and everything like this, and it's worrying. Now the German army has invested 150 billion in future weaponry.
I talked about that at the time because it felt to me like an extraordinary moment, and it didn't go unreported, but it probably didn't. Because humans are a weird species, it didn't register in the way that you might have expected it to do. The idea of Germany rearming in Europe would, know, when we were kids, it would have been unthinkable, whereas now it was unremarkable.
The amount of traffic now airspace is
that's a bit anecdotal. That's a bit anecdotal, isn't it? I mean, maybe you just live under a flight path and they've changed. I mean, do you really think they're doing more training flights of military aircraft than ever before?
Definitely. Okay. We even get warnings now of low-flying aircraft coming across.
Fair enough. What are our armed forces for?
Defence.
Against?
Pure defence. When I was in the army, that was drilled into us. But the Americans, if we had to push back the Soviet Union, NATO would do that, but the Americans would go further. And with regards to Trump and relying on Trump, that won't happen.
I think that's a big shift, isn't it, since you were in the service. I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to sound like an aggressive question or an attempted zinger, but I promise you it isn't. It's just coming from a place of curiosity. What were we defending in Iraq?
Good point. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
So it was a zinger. or I mean, in Afghanistan, you could sort of
make a case for resisting the Taliban, albeit that didn't exactly go according to plan. But what you couldn't do is make a case as to why we picked that fight and not 30 others on the planet that would have had a similar moral dimension.
Over here in Germany, there's a large amount of people who came from Russia to Germany in the 90s.
Right.
The wall came down. And then now you've got people, thousands and thousands of Russian-born people demonstrating in Cologne, Berlin, for Putin.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Which is...
Well, that's slightly unnerving as well, isn't it?
Of course it is, especially when they say, well, look, when the wall came down, there was an agreement that NATO wouldn't expand to the east. Whether that is a written
I don't think there was. I think that's Putin propaganda, really. Practiced by people like Nigel Farage and the one who took the bribes from the Kremlin speech.
Yeah, someone has to do a bit of research about that, surely.
Well, it's a North Atlantic Treaty Organisation, and sovereign countries would be free to join even if they'd previously been in the Warsaw Pact. So I don't think any codified treaty would order sovereign countries to not do something that they wanted to do under a democratic measure at some unspecified point in the future. But I say that with my full chest and a degree of confidence. But of course, you're right. I could be wrong. It just seems unlikely on this particular occasion. Thank you, mate. I'll go back to Martin and Bridlington shortly, but before that, the reason why we're having this conversation, the Russian action, the Defence Secretary has said, have we got that clip? I didn't misremember it. Have we got do you remember the former Defence Secretary who was talking about the Russian threat? Have a listen to John Healey talking about the Russian threat today. This is the Defence Secretary a little bit earlier.
So my message to Russia and to Putin is this. We see you. We know what you're doing. And if the Yantar travels south this week, we are ready.
This isn't Idiot's Corner territory, but Rick has expressed a degree of cynicism about this speech being made in the weeks before the budget. Maybe, but it's the conclusion of a year-long inquiry by the Commons Defence Committee that informs the news coverage. That's got nothing to do with the short-term political calendar and everything to do with the conclusion that Britain is not ready to defend itself against invasion. I wonder how many of us genuinely worry about that. You think about Ukraine, and you think about Germany rearming, and you think about the lens through which we have viewed European history throughout our lives. Some major changes have taken place. You think about the United States being a steadfast ally. It's a slightly rose-tinted analysis of their interventions in the First and Second World Wars, but only slightly. That's not reliable anymore. He's too busy cozying up to a bloke who green lights, according to American intelligence. Donald Trump's currently cozying up to a man who green lights the murder of journalists. And so, quite how reliable he would be in the event of major peril is not entirely clear, as it was under almost every previous president of the United States. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't feel it. I don't feel this peril that is being described. I don't have a fear of the UK being invaded, but maybe that just makes me a muppet. Happily, not as big a muppet as this guy.
It is absolutely atrocious and outrageous what Russia did in Salisbury. We have responded to that. Frankly, Russia should go away, it should shut up.
There it is. Is he in the House of Lords now, or is he just a knight? Still in the House of Commons, but he got a knighthood.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC Barnum Mood finally has got it that not only is there a moral imperative to fix the system, but also that if these plans are voted through, and if, yes, they are agreed to by Nigel Farage and the Tories, that is fundamentally a good thing for Labour politically, because it shoots their fox dead. They have nothing to campaign about.
Tom Swarbrick, Monday to Friday from 4 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
This is what award-winning customer service sounds like from real Octopus Energy calls.
Octopus are an absolute breath of fresh air.
Your customer service was tip-top. You know, I couldn't fault it.
People are friendly on the telephone. You can always get problem solved. And all of your colleagues have done such a wonderful job.
The customer service was really good.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which 8 years running.
Do you ever feel like getting back under your duvet in the middle of the day?
Ferroglobin is a great-tasting liquid formula with iron, which contributes to the reduction of tiredness and fatigue and normal formation of hemoglobin. Ferroglobin from Vitabiotics at these pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
At Laithwaite's, we go to great lengths to bring you great wine. We go far and wide, searching high, and we mean really high, and low, and we mean stored deep underground in a cave low. Off the shelf, we don't go there. Off the beaten track, we certainly go there. And the best bit is, we even come to you. Order now at laithwaites.co.uk. Laithwaites. We stop at nothing to bring you great wine.
Things are really heating up in the country's smallest house. Dad! Squealed Mia Mouse. We could save around £100 by setting the boiler flow temperature to 60 degrees.
And turning radiators down in rooms we don't use.
Interrupted Mo. Yes, Mo. Turn them down, not off, said Mia.
Plus finding and blocking drafts,
said Mo. Should save enough to increase our allowance. A little saves a lot. You could save around £100 a year off your energy bills with 3 tips at gov.uk/clean energy.
If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, what you thought you were getting may not be what you ended up with. From unexpected site fee increases, running costs, a huge depreciation in value, many owners feel they've been missold. If you think this might be you, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive the compensation you're entitled to. Text ASSIST to 78900 to find out more. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which? 8 years running. Octopus Energy.
James O'Brien on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10:48 is the time. I'm with Jonathan. Now, who knew they'd become the good old days when Gavin Williamson was entertaining us with his performance as Secretary of State for Defence? I like this, though, from Jason, who's managed to bring Kidderminster into the conversation. Anybody who can bring Kidderminster into the conversation is going to win a very permanent place, perhaps, in my good books. I do this, he writes in capital letters, talking about imagining as a schoolboy what you would do in the event of an invasion. I often think about the fact that Kiddie, as Kidderminster is affectionately known to its residents, I often think about the fact that Kiddie is in a dip, and Brun is very high above sea level. That's actually that West Bromwich Albion has the highest football stadium above sea level in England. So if they did nuclear bomb Birmingham, would the shockwave go above our heads down in Kidderminster, or would it roll downhill? Maybe Kidderminster residents only need a very shallow bunker, but that would make digging easy. I thought it was just me who thought about this stuff. Writes Jason in Kiddie with his bucket and spade in hand. And oddly, for fans of Kidderminster-related trivia, and there may be one out there is a dimension to what Jason has added that has historical resonance. There is a former underground military complex in Kidderminster. And lots of people who live in Kidderminster don't even know about it. There's a former underground military complex which covers about 3.5 miles of tunnels. You can visit it, not very often. It's one of those museums that isn't open every day. It's called Drake Road Tunnels. April 1941, the Ministry of Aircraft Production announced its intention to build a massive underground factory just outside Wolverine, near Kinveredge, if you know that part of the world. And it's because of the sandstone. It's easy to tunnel it. And until relatively recently, I think in my lifetime, people were still living in caves carved out of the sandstone cliffs in Kimber. They had outwardly bricks on the front, but behind, the dwellings were carved out of the sandstone. So if you wanted a new room, you could just dig one, I presume. Although, don't quote me on that. So there you go. That's a dimension to possible nuclear war. Except it's not nuclear war that we're talking about today. It's the possibility of some sort of invasion. It's the paucity of our missile capability, and it's the conclusion of a year-long inquiry that Britain is not ready to defend invasion. And that's the word on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Martin is in Bridlington, hopefully on a better line. Martin, what were you saying?
Yeah, I served in the Territorial Army first back in the 80s, and then I joined the Royal Navy for 22 years. So a bit like your first caller, I've seen it from the Cold War up to, well, left the Navy in 2008. So, I mean, my first role in the Territorial Army, we were a quick reaction force to grab our webbing that was designed in 1958, our SLR. Didn't get issued with waterproofs, only just started to get pilot boots after the Falklands War, and then to immediately just be flown over or sent on a North Sea ferry across to Europe and replaced the thousands of men that had been killed by the stampeding hordes of the Russians.
That was still the narrative, or that was the Cold War narrative, is that we could be at war with Russia by tea time.
Yeah, so that's what we used to practice. But and then I did a few battle camps, living in trenches, eating and doing your toilet in the field. And I thought, no, there's got to be something better than this. So I joined the Navy, and I went to diesel electric submarines, and they were basically one generation further on than the Second World War. They were very agricultural, big switches, breakers. Everything was stand operated. You could send everybody forward to go deep in emergency. We used to practice that once or twice a year. It was proper, I'm going to call it a boys' own adventure, but that's the wrong thing. But it was, as a young man, to be doing all this, you know, surrounded by relatives who'd served in the First World War. Some in the First War and the Second World War.
So what you're describing, I mean, it was already a bit anachronistic then, the self-image of the armed forces. It was already a little bit out of date, even
absolutely,
then.
Yeah. As soon as the Cold War came down, they said, well, why are we still pushing these, what we used to call us diesel dinosaurs around? So we had no choice but to go nuclear. Now, we'd had the nuclear deterrent since 1969 in the Resolution class, and I ended up going to the Vanguard class submarines. So I've completed 7 deterrent patrols with Armageddon either at my feet or at my head, depending which bunk I was in.
Listen, I feel a bit embarrassed asking you this question because of what you just described. But for people who say, how is it a deterrent? What do you say? And I know that in a way you don't need to really worry about the philosophy of it because you're too busy with dealing with the reality of it. But there is something. There's a tension to the idea that the only reason why Russia doesn't send nuclear bombs our way is because we've got a few we could send back their way.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, obviously, you read about it when you're young, and then the older you get, the wiser you get, the more you read. But I mean, mutual assured destruction is just the best term ever. I mean, I remember hearing somebody, I forget, who said, you know, the best definition of nuclear weapons is 2 men waist deep in petrol, one with 2 matches and one with 3. You know, it doesn't matter who lights it. That's it, isn't it? So if you thought about it too much, you would probably go a little bit mad. But we were there to provide the deterrent. So, you know, if the balloon went up, because every penny then spent would be wasted. If we're retaliating back against somebody, that means, does the UK even exist? You know, so
do you think we have a deterrent now?
Oh yes, it's the same deterrent now.
You sounded a bit like the Churchill dog pen. Oh yes.
But it's right because it's been there since 1969. It's called the continuous at-sea deterrent.
But that would just be the submarines that you served on. What's your answer to the question of what the whole armed forces are for?
It's deterrent. Why do you need a raincoat on a sunny day? It's not raining, is it? But it might rain. So why do you need armed forces? You need armed forces. Yes, the money would be better spent on the NHS or on schools or hospitals.
Not if it starts raining.
But not if it's exactly. You know, so we do need something. Yes, you don't need the massive armed forces that we used to have up until the 80s and the 90s. You know, with literally hundreds of tanks.
Well, again, you could answer until we do. I mean, that's the real question underpinning a lot of this conversation this hour, isn't it? The idea of maybe it is actually raining. Maybe it's already started raining and we're just not noticing. Because I don't know why, but we just don't think it's rain, or we think it's something else. We don't appreciate the efforts that Putin and his acolytes are already putting into. You get a rough idea about what Vladimir Putin wants for this country, what he would consider to be in his best interests and against our patriotic interests. You get the best idea of that by looking at the kind of politicians in this country who dig up and no prizes for guessing who's at the top of that particular Christmas tree. Martin, thank you. Bernard is in Belfast. Bernard, what would you like to say?
Well, I would agree with you, but I would also point out that
It's very important that we respect post-war agreements with regard to the Iron Curtain. And that has not gone away. And Putin has clearly reintroduced the Iron Curtain and wishes to push it forward.
There weren't really any historical agreements. I mean, Gorbachev was absolutely adamant that the narrative of betrayal of the sort of NATO-Warsaw Pact standoff is completely bogus.
Was it really?
Yeah, I've got the clip of Gorbachev in front of me. I don't know whether he's talking Russian or English, though, so I'm not sure whether I can play it at the moment.
I'm quite sure Gorbachev said that, but Putin's position is that a reality?
I don't care. If Sweden wants to join NATO, it absolutely can. That's a matter of sovereignty and democracy, isn't it? And in fact, the fact that they want to suggests we should probably be a little bit more wary about the growing threat, the massing threat.
I think that's yes, what role should the army hold. And I agree with you. I think we need to back our neighbours, are adjacent to Russia.
And do you think we do? Do you think we have the heft to?
I think we have the know-how.
Yeah.
I think we have the capabilities. I think we ought to. I think, it may not be politically obvious, it may not be apparent, but I think, I do believe that there's a concern amongst European countries, eventually, that Russia will always pose a threat on that eastern front.
Yeah, well, and the threat is greater than it's been at any point since the Cold War, which I think they would queue up to tell you from the Chancellor in Germany through to Donald Tusk in Poland, and countries like Estonia and Latvia are absolutely clear on that. We're a little bit detached, even without Brexit. We've always managed to sort of plough a slightly different furrow, probably as a consequence of the English Channel and the physical detachment from mainland Europe, from continental Europe. And then, of course, Brexit came along and delivered Vladimir Putin's wildest dreams by detaching us economically and politically from continental Europe as well as geographically. General Lord Danett, former head of the army, has described this report today as a sobering wake-up call. And I think we should heed his warning. We have piled risk on risk over the years, taken too many peace dividends since the end of the Cold War, and we now stand in grave danger from Putin's Russia. The time to act is now. We are in the last chance saloon. And I'll tell you what's weird today is reflecting on how that risk, how that threat from Russia lands in your life. I think I have an above-average grasp of Russian disinformation and indeed of Russian interference in Western democratic exercises, whether you're talking about Brexit referendums or American presidential elections. It's a very, very, very easy case to make, even to prove. What you can't do is measure it. What you can't do is put numbers and weights and metrics on how much success that influencer enjoyed. All you can really do is look at whether the outcome would have delighted the Kremlin. And if the answer is yes, then they have probably worked very hard to bring that outcome about. Even that doesn't prove that they tipped the scales. But even as someone with an above-average grasp of all of that, I still have a psychological block when it comes to feeling the scale of the military threat. Isn't that strange?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the Defence Secretary has warned President Putin that the UK is ready after revealing a Russian spy ship is on the edge of British waters. The Yantar is currently north of Scotland and is said to be gathering intelligence and mapping undersea cables. RAF pilots who were deployed to track its movements were targeted with lasers last week. Speaking in Downing Street in the past hour, John Healey had this warning from Moscow.
We see you, we know what you're doing, and if the Yantar travels south this week, we are ready. And I want to praise the dedication and professionalism of our armed forces. They work 24/7 every day of the year to keep this nation safe.
John Healey's speech comes after he announced 13 potential new sites for UK arms factories. It follows a report by MPs that warns Britain is lacking a national plan to defend itself from an attack. A man accused of stabbing 10 people on a train in Cambridgeshire at the start of November has been charged with further offences. It's part of a wider investigation. Anthony Williams, who's 32, is facing 7 charges, including 2 counts of attempted murder. Police say they relate to incidents reported on the 31st of October. The rate of inflation has fallen to its lowest level since June. Figures show it dropped slightly to 3.6% last month after the easing of gas and electricity costs. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says it's positive, but she wants to go further.
I recognise that inflation, the cost of living, is still a big burden on families right across the country, and that's why in the budget next week I'll be taking targeted action to bring down inflation to address the cost of living.
US politicians have paved the way for Donald Trump to publish more files into the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. The US Congress voted to force officials to release documents into the late sex offender. UK house prices rose 2.6% in the year to September, a slowdown from August. The Office for National Statistics says average prices now stand at around £272,000, with London the only region recording an annual fall. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading up 9 at 95.61. The pound buys $1.31 and €1.13. LBC weather, dry, cold and sunny for many. Some wintry showers developing for the north of Scotland with a high of 6 degrees. From Global's newsroom at LBC, I'm Dominic Ennis.
It's the last chance to get yourself a ticket for tonight's lotto draw.
It could be you.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation.
It's 3 minutes after 11. I've got a double bubble missed information for you coming up after PMQs in the final hour, the next hour indeed of the programme, addressing one of the hardiest of perennials. Listen, if I say it's nearly December, or it's the middle of November, therefore one of the finest traditions of British media, of British journalism, is about to be enacted, or has already been enacted, what would you think of? Knowing what you know about this programme, knowing what you know about the rest of the British media, and knowing what you know about the calendar, as Christmas approaches, what will British journalism be dedicating itself to very, very soon, if not already? You're absolutely right. Someone's cancelling Christmas. Claim idiots. And we'll be having a look at those idiots and those claims in the next hour of the programme. We're also, and I don't know that this counts as Idiot's Corner, because the truth is halfway around the world. A lie is halfway around the world, isn't it, before the truth has got its trousers on. But if you have been inhaling headlines about record numbers of people fleeing the country, including various callers to the Breakfast Show who can't wait to live in a country that's got Sharia law, which is a bit of a turnabout, isn't it? But there we are. It would appear that the facts, as we touched upon but didn't fully explain yesterday, are rather different than the headlines, but not necessarily because the people writing the headlines are trying to mislead or defraud you. And same with Brexit, really. I know it doesn't necessarily please everybody, but I don't think that a lot of people who thought that they were in favour of Brexit realised how stupid that position was. They weren't lying. They weren't pretending to support it. They just didn't understand what they were supporting. And the reporting of our migration figures, which I told you yesterday, everyone who's constantly wanging on about the necessity to bring immigration down will not today be celebrating the fact that immigration has come down. Instead, they are massaging the figures to pretend that it's proof of people fleeing the country as a consequence of Labour policies that haven't really been enacted yet. On we go. What's the opposite of patriotism, I wonder? I don't know, but we've seen a lot of it. And this is
you don't like pets?
National or country-related conversation as well that we're about to have next, heading off in an entirely different direction.
Like pets at all.
If I told you that the government wanted to introduce something to our lives that had already been linked to an increased risk of 32 different diseases, if I told you that the government wanted to introduce something that was linked, scientifically and evidentially linked, to harm in every major organ, you'd probably think I'd gone bonkers, or that I signed up to a tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theory website. The government wants to do what? It wants to introduce something to our lives, to our bodies,
to our children's bodies that has been linked to 32 different diseases, including diabetes, cancer, heart disease and depression, and which has been shown or linked to harm in every major organ. The world's largest review of ultra-processed food has arrived at these conclusions. And it is one of those subjects that has changed over the years that we've spent together. You kind of sometimes feel that you've got something in your hands. You've got to grips with something, metaphorically speaking, and then it changes. I think my early interest in ultra-processed foods is because of all the mountebanks and charlatans who would constantly wang on about the nanny state without telling you that secretly funded, without telling you that the lobby groups they worked for while pretending that they were secretly funded by organisations that made enormous amount of money from encouraging us to do things that caused us great harm. It's extraordinary how successful that takeover of public discourse has been. You can barely turn on the television or the radio without hearing some Herbert from a secretly funded lobby group masquerading as a think tank, claiming that the government is interfering in our lives in unacceptable ways. Really, what's it trying to do? What's this terrible government doing in such a totalitarian fashion? Well, it's arguing that we shouldn't be consuming the stuff that increases the risk of 32 different diseases. What? And that's a bad thing, is it? Down on Tufton Street? You want us to do more? Gambling? More? Ultra-processed foods? More tobacco? More alcohol? Who's paying your wages? I can't tell you that. Why not? Oh, hang on, let me check the memo. Because we are worried that our donors would come in for public criticism. Oh, okay, yeah. That's what's technically known as a massive lie. But again, that goes unchecked by the kind of clowns that book these people to their programs on a weekly, daily, monthly, annual basis. Who pays your wages? Can't answer that question, you're not coming on the program. Full stop. End of conversation. Sadly, we are close to unique in that context on this show, and I don't understand why. Even after it's been pointed out that if people won't tell you who pays their wages, you shouldn't trust their quotes, research, end quotes, because it's quite possible it's sponsored by precisely the people who have ended up hearing exactly what they want to hear in the research that they have paid for. Could be a coincidence, and if you believe that, there is a bridge that I want to say. I've got two questions. What I mean by having come to grips with it, or got a grasp on it, is that I don't think anything's changed. We talk about it a lot, not just on this program, but ultra-processed food is a big thing now in conversation. Do you know one of the things I hate the most about food conversations? Not about food, I don't hate food. I'm not fond of Nazi. One of the things I hate the most about food-based conversations is the class dimension. It's another thing that the liars on Tufton Street do. They pretend with attempts to, for example, put taxes on fizzy drinks to discourage people from consuming things that are linked to 32 different diseases. They pretend that it's an attack upon poorer people, it's an attack on working classes. It's not, it's the polar opposite. We don't think that the people who are paying these lobby groups are feeding their own children this month on anything like the scale that other people are for a moment. But I can't see any improvement at all. We're still, I think, second only to the United States, according to the research that I've seen this morning, when it comes to how much of this stuff we consume. The impact upon our health is cataclysmic. It's described by this latest report, which you can read in The Lancet this week, as fueling an illness pandemic. 43 scientists and researchers arguing that ultra-processed foods are displacing fresh foods and meals as food firms put profit above all else. And a pandemic of chronic disease such as cancer and diabetes has followed. I think of, at this point, tobacco and fossil fuels. And I wonder whether you're ready to see ultra-processed foods in the same space. And it feels wrong, right, to put them in the same space. But politically, they're almost identical. Politically, the effort put into encouraging us to consume more and more and more of something that will kill us or hurt us or harm us is identical.
with ultra-processed foods as it is to tobacco and fossil fuels, historically. And the huge effort, political and financial, put into resisting attempts to cut consumption is identical as well. You know, you look at the organisations set up to resist climate change science, and you see an almost mirror image of the organisations dedicated to resisting ultra-processed food science. It is identical. I mean, I sometimes wonder why this needs to be explained, and then I remember the amount of money and energy that's been expended on persuading people to do things that are bad for them dwarfs the amount of money and energy expended on persuading people to do things that are good for them. One really helpful illustration is the amount of effort that's put into advertising tap water as a refreshing libation, as opposed to the amount of money that's put into advertising drinks made out of corn syrup or drinks that are measurably and obviously bad for you. If you are a harried parent of any class and you have not educated yourself, or you haven't been reached with the educational thrust on this issue, simple advertising will persuade you that these things can't possibly be as bad for you or your child as the advertising tells you they are. And I remain puzzled by two elements of this conversation. Well, I'm puzzled by one element, and I want to inspire you with another. Okay? So, question number one is, why are we among the worst in the world at this? What is it about the United Kingdom that explains why we are among the worst in the world when it comes to consuming ultra-processed foods? And, anything that's not fresh, really. It may contain artificial flavours, emulsifiers, colourings. Most obviously, you're looking at soft drinks and packaged snacks. Extremely palatable, very high in calories, very low in nutrients. Unprocessed or minimally processed foods, like whole fruits and vegetables, are the other end of the scale. And the amount of this stuff that we eat is frankly extraordinary. Listen to what Professor Chris Van Tulliken from University College London, and author of a best-selling book on this very, very subject. Graham and others have wondered how long it would take me to mention that it kept me off the #1 spot in the Sunday Times bestseller list. So I have a conflicted relationship with this book. Damn you, Van Tulliken. But anyway, #2 is good as well. Just ask Wham. But he describes it like this: there's been a 3-decade history of reformulation by the food industry. We took the fat out first, then we took the sugar out. We replaced the sugar with the sweeteners, the fats with gums. These products have been extensively reformulated, and we have seen obesity, particularly obesity in childhood and other rates of diet-related disease, persistently go up in line with reformulation. That sounds like Frankenstein's laboratory, doesn't it? Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory. It does not sound like a greengrocer's. Even the language of reformulation, gums and sweeteners, sounds like something from a laboratory rather than something from a field. Because it is something from a laboratory rather than something from a field. It just is. This is not a product-level discussion. He adds the entire diet is being ultra-processed. And remember that built into the definition of ultra-processed food is its purpose. Its purpose is for profit. Okay, 3 questions. Okay. Why is the UK so addicted, so much more addicted to ultra-processed food than other countries? Okay? 0345 6060 973. Question number 2. How easy is it to get off? I'm doing really well. I haven't made a particular effort. I've started cooking a lot. I've really started cooking a lot in the last 5 years. Since we started talking about it, I cook every night at home. Regardless of who's in the house. If I'm in on my own, I'll even cook for myself. I don't remove entirely ultra-processed foods from your diet. That would be absolutely impossible to do. But I've got an app called Yucca, Y-U-K-A, where you can scan the barcode on everything you buy and it will give you a rating on how ultra-processed it is. And I find that incredibly helpful. Sometimes I'm really taken by surprise. Some of the surprises are delightful. Some of the things that you think must be ultra-processed because they're in the same aisle as other ultra-processed things turn out not to be ultra-processed. But I recognise that many people, once you know the truth, I don't think it's that hard to massively reduce the amount of ultra-processed foods that you eat. Well, once you have accepted the science, but that's why I'm talking about nicotine and fossil fuels, because we have seen with both of those how easy it is either to ignore the science or latterly to dishonestly refute it. But when it comes to ultra-processed food, I don't know why it's so hard for people to see what is in front of them. And that's question 3. Why? I mean, it's partly linked to question 1, isn't it? The idea of why this country has such a terrible relationship with such terrible foods. Why the UK? Regular listeners to the programme have little, mental signposts now. I bet you do, because how many people are thinking about French school dinner at this point because of that reaction that we all had when someone sent us the French school dinner menu from their child's school in France, and it was just utterly unrecognisable to the average British parent. The combination of fresh and therefore healthy food served up in a way that sort of would have turkey twizzlers turning in their grave. So why the UK? Why do we have, historically, politically, economically, currently, such an appalling relationship with ultra-processed food? In terms of what was it like, lived experience, inspiring other people, how hard or easy is it to give up? Once you know the science, once you've read the books, just tell me about the changes you made, okay? And the impact that had. Because what you won't be able to do really is say for certain that it has removed the risk of diabetes, reduced the risk of cancer, improved your heart health, because most of us aren't measuring these things. But you can talk to me about mental health and depression. I came off ultra-processed food, and listen, correlation is not causation, but I'm pretty certain the only major change I made in my life was to massively reduce the amount of ultra-processed food I was eating. Physically, the most obvious change was losing weight. Mentally, the most obvious change was feeling happier. And who here doesn't want to feel happy? And then you've got the third question, which is why it is like fossil fuels and climate change. Why is it so hard to persuade people that they are hurting themselves when it is simultaneously so obvious? There's quite a lot there to dig into. You come at it from whichever angle you want. You can answer one question, 2 questions, all 3 questions, or no questions, because you think I've missed a really important element of the conversation and you're very keen to air it. But that's your starting.
Madrid discovered.
Why the UK? Why do we have such an atrocious 57% of our adult diet? That puts us in second place, 1 point behind the United States. In third place, you'd have to go to Canada, but they're 10 points behind us. So we really are almost alongside America in a class of our own when it comes to consuming ultra-processed foods. I would like you to tell me why you think that is. Okay? Then I'd like you to tell me what changes you have made and what impact those changes had. And then we'll have a little look at the idea of why we're so resistant to the science. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. It is 11:90.
This is LBC.
You plan a holiday, you plan a commute. Meal plans, career plans, even workouts need a plan. So doesn't it stand to reason that your money has one too? Because the sad truth is, if it doesn't, it's just sitting there, barely growing, if at all. That's why you need a money plan. And Quilter can help. It's a lot easier to stick to than a workout plan. Money needs a plan. Quilter. Pensions, investments, advice. Find out more at quilter.com.
Things are really heating up in the country's smallest house.
Great! Squealed me a mouse. We could save around £100 by setting the boiler flow temperature to 60 degrees. And turning radiators down in rooms we don't use.
Interrupted Mo.
Yes, Mo. Turn them down, not off, said Mia. Plus finding and blocking drafts, said Mo. Should save enough to increase our allowance.
A little saves a lot. You could save around £100 a year off your energy bills with 3 tips at gov.uk/clean energy.
Hey Harry, hello mate, got any tips?
The best bet is to play Bet Victor's daily free-to-play guaranteed prize wheel.
What guaranteed prizes does this guaranteed prize wheel guarantee?
The guaranteed prize wheel means you're guaranteed to win prizes, like free bets, free spins, exclusive offers and cash. Guaranteed.
What was it called again?
The guaranteed prize wheel.
Well, I guarantee I'll give it a spin.
And I guarantee you'll win a prize.
Listen to Harry. Make your best bet on Bet Victor's guaranteed prize wheel. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. Opt in and spin the wheel. Rewards expire 24 hours after claiming. Gamble.
James O'Brien. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
21 minutes after 11 is the time. And, there's one bit missing from this. Sorry, my bad. How can we do it? What would you do? How would you stop? There's someone listening to this programme right now, dealing with the reality of the advertising industry that we have in this country, and that as a commercial broadcaster we rely upon. But how would you persuade somebody to change their ways? What would you say? What would be the little kicker, the magic bullet, or the catchphrase? You know, like the Green Cross code that taught generations of children how to cross the road without getting hit by a vehicle. Well, is there anything we could do for each other, just to bring to the table and say, if you do this, you will find it a lot easier? Now, reading labels is possibly on that list, but that can be a bit of a faff, which is why I love this app. A lot of you are asking me about it. They should have me on a retainer. Yucca is called Y-U-K-A. As with a lot of apps, there are tiers. I think there's a paid option and there's a free option. But the free option is pretty comprehensive. But they don't have advertising. It's not in any way linked to brands. What's really interesting about it, and probably really relevant, I'll shut up, I promise, in a minute, but just let me get this out. Really relevant to this conversation more broadly is that it will give you different ratings for products you think are the same. So, you know, like, oddly, lip balm. I know nobody eats lip balm, or at least you're not supposed to, but you can have 2 lip balms, one of which has a very high rating for ultra-processed ingredients, and one of which has a very low rating. So one of which is, quite good for you, and one of which is bad for you. But the same with tortilla chips, would you believe? Some of the snacks in the crisp aisle will have a high rating for healthiness. They will be good when it comes to ultra-processed ingredients, and they'll be in the same aisle as the stuff that's really, really bad. I'm going to check my own history on that in a minute, because I don't want to misremember anything and give you bad advice, but it's probably my favourite app. 23 after 11 is the time. Dom is in Ashvale to kick things off. Dom, what do you want to say?
Hi Dean, thanks for having me on. First time caller, and I'm so glad that this is the conversation I've called into.
Good man.
I went on an ultra-processed free journey about 2 years ago when my daughter was born.
Yeah.
The reason we did it was because she had a dairy allergy, or like a milk intolerance.
Yes.
So we had to start finding things that she could have instead of milk, instead of cheese. And actually, when we started looking on the back of these packages, it is sickening how many ingredients, how many different chemicals essentially are in all of these ingredients. And to begin with, it was just her. We were just doing it for her, and we were just eating normally. We were doing the standard thing like calorie counting, eating what we think is good for us, but we're getting on the scale and not losing any weight. Eventually, it obviously made sense for us to all go, when I say all, me, my partner, and my little girl, to go on this ultra-processed free diet. And in that time, I've lost 20 kilograms of weight. I also have Crohn's disease, and I have had that for 15 years since I was a teenager.
I'm glad you clarified that, because the way you said it sounded like it was a consequence of changing your diet, whereas you're about to tell us that the symptoms have actually got better as a consequence of changing your diet.
Absolutely. For 15 years, I've been on medication, and that was, supposedly to help my Crohn's disease. And I've been doing your normal diet, you see these packaging, it's high this and it's high that, and it's actually dreadful for you. In the last 2 years, I've not been on any medication. I've been on an ultra-processed free diet, and my symptoms have completely cleared. Now, I'm not saying I'm cured Crohn's disease, because I don't think that is the possibility, or it is the case. However, my symptoms have got so much better since being on the ultra-processed free diet. I think the problem in this country is that it's so convenient for people to just, it's not made easy for people to do this. Because you go into Tesco's, you go into wherever you go, and you pick up a sandwich, but this sandwich has got so much stuff in it, you can't just easily go on an ultra-processed free diet. You have to sort of change your routine and change your life a little bit. The other thing
you have to cook, you have to prepare your own food a lot more, don't you, as well, which can be time consuming. And ultra-processed food is cheap as well.
Yes, that was my next point. Is that changing to an ultra-processed free diet is not easy because it's so expensive. Buying good food for you, fresh fruit and vegetables, all that sort of stuff is expensive. However, I do honestly think if people change their routine ever so slightly to, factor in the fact they have to pre-make their lunch, pre-make their dinners, whatever it might be, and start incorporating ultra-processed free foods, it will change your life. And do you know the annoying thing about it? I have these conversations with my friends and colleagues, and people look at me like I'm strange.
Why do you think that is? I mean, apart from your physical appearance, why do you think that is?
It's the red hair that does it. I think they don't like it. But, I think it's just the norm, isn't it?
Yeah.
When people start talking about things that aren't normal, even though once you make the change, you will be on my side, I promise you.
You've got the zeal of a convert, haven't you? You sound like an evangelist, and that is where I sort of come from as well, that idea that I can't quite believe that people don't believe you, if you see what I mean. They can see that you're healthy. They know that you are. It's visible, and I bet you're happier as well. I mean, I bet you're a more cheerful person as a consequence as well. And yet,
the change is just nothing like I ever expected. And hats off to my partner who actually got me into it, because without that, and I wish I could show the people that listen to you the life I lived before. Busy drinks, chocolate. I've been overweight for years, like I said, Crohn's disease. It's completely changed, and actually, eventually, now that we've changed some things, we eat organic diet, stuff like that. When I try dairy milk, whatever it is, I don't like it. I don't actually enjoy it, which then makes the whole thing a lot easier, because I'm not bothered about having a sweet treat and all this rubbish, because I don't enjoy the taste anymore. I like the stuff that I like. My palate has completely changed, and it honestly has changed me for like.
I can hear it in your voice. Everyone can. That's why I love radio. No, and you've done. I didn't think anyone would actually be able to answer all three questions, but you've made a very good fist of it. The changes it's made for you, perhaps not as much as we could on the reasons why this country has a bigger problem with it than other countries. I'm trying to think of things that would be unique to us, because if you talk, for example, about rationing, which is often a popular answer to the question. I mean, you remember when growing up and shop board was seen as preferable. Shop board was a treat. A shop ball cake. I missed the Kipling fondant for, man, this probably isn't a very good thing to do in a phone about the perils of ultra-processed food, but do you remember? That wouldn't apply in the United States of America. There wouldn't be the kind of response to rationing. And also, I know it was generations ago, but it would still have filtered through what your grandparents fed your parents, what your parents fed you, what you feed your children. So it can't just be that, because the United States and Australia are very, very high. The three countries in the world where Rupert Murdoch has the greatest stranglehold on the UK public. I think that's a coincidence, but not necessarily. It's coming up to 11:30. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. More on this in a moment. PMQ's, of course, on the way at 12 o'clock. Natasha will be joining me shortly before then to have our customary crack at predicting what is likely to come up. And then you'll be delighted to hear Simon Marks with us at 12:30. Yet more madness in the Oval Office. But again, the line between silly and sinister being hopped over with gay abandon by the President of the United States of America and the world leader, believed by American intelligence to have ordered the murder of a journalist just a few years ago. And then I've got a double bubble misinformation for you. Right-wing media claiming that Christmas has been cancelled again. Guess what? Not true. And right-wing media claiming that people are fleeing the country in their droves as a consequence of Labour policy. Guess what? Not true. UK forces in
been deployed to track a Russian spy ship in waters north of Scotland. The Defence Secretary John Healey says the Yantar is gathering intelligence and mapping undersea cables. A man accused of carrying out a knife attack on a train in Cambridgeshire earlier this month has been charged with further offences. Anthony Williams, who's 32, is facing 7 new charges, including 2 counts of attempted murder. And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has welcomed a small drop in inflation, but says the cost of living is still a big issue. Inflation fell from 3.8% to 3.6% last month. LBC weather, dry, cold and sunny for many. Some wintry showers for the north of Scotland, a high of 6 degrees.
LBC.
With Lloyd's Home Insurance, there's £50,000 to be won when you cover the glassware no one's actually allowed to use, or the garden shed, aka your fortress of calm. Rated excellent on Trustpilot, you can be confident with your cover when you take out a new home insurance policy and be in for a chance to win £50,000. Get a quote with Lloyd's today. Buy a new home insurance policy direct from us by the 31st of December 2025. Offer T's and C's apply. Policy terms, limits and exclusions apply.
For the nappies, peekaboos and tea parties. Mess, tantrums and sleepless nights. All those yo-yos, action figures and shinies. Lifts to mates, lifts to parties, lifts everywhere. For each and every one of those teenage years. Let's be honest, you probably owe your parents one. So tell them about pension credit. It could boost their pension income by an average of over £4,000 a year. Pension credit. Credit where credit's due. Eligibility criteria apply.
Waitrose presents. And the main event. One cook learns that love doesn't always shout. Enough for me. Sometimes it whispers.
Mercedes' best bit, Dad.
Starring succulent #1 free-range turkey bauble, wrapped in dried cured beetroot smoked bacon, with cranberry chilled pork stuffing and orange glaze.
Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Subject to availability and delivery slots available to order online and in stores from 19th of December.
This could be the best Christmas ever. Christmas Cash Call is here with a life-changing £100,000 to be won. Enter this week's draw before 5 p.m. Friday and you could get a call with £100,000. Christmas Cash Call. Text radio to 82200 to enter now. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network charge. 18 plus, UK only, global network competition. Full rules and free entry at ChristmasCashCall.com.
James O'Brien on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 33 minutes after 11. I mean, it is just fascinating. Think about long journeys. I think one of the great breakthrough calls on this subject was from a lorry driver, wasn't it, who just compared the experience in France, or most of continental Europe actually, with the experience in the UK. I've had many of my breakthrough moments with regards to ultra-processed food when on long car journeys. The queue in the service station. One of them does salads. Not one of the service stations, but one of the franchises that often pops up in service stations does salads. But even there, you know, if you help yourself to the generic dressing or something like that, you can be piling unhealthy stuff on top of healthy stuff. But I just think of the queues. And you know that little bit, if you're ordering online, not online, if you're ordering on a screen in a fast food joint, it tries to tell you more. So you've ordered a meal and it says, do you want some extra nuggets with that? Or do you want to stick an extra burger on the side? Or do you want to supersize it? But all of these things happen in other countries. Why is the impact so profound in the United Kingdom? I honestly don't know. And listen, I'm not a communist. I'm not a mark of food, despite what Johnny Vaughan said last night. I'm not a food mark. I recognise that everything in moderation. This isn't a scorched earth suggestion that we should criminalise sweets or ban crisps. But if you're putting roughly half of your diet is measurably, scientifically and demonstrably bad for you, we've got a major flipping problem. A major problem. Matt's in Thatcher. Matt, what would you like to say?
Hey guys, how you doing today?
Matt, what's on your mind?
Excellent. Well, I think your last call of Christmas.
said everything I'd want to say. He sounds in a very similar position. So, as of January this year, I had a routine appointment where I needed to check the blood pressure, and I've been on a mountain bike holiday. I'm always keeping myself fit.
Right.
I've been walking up mountains with, 10, 15 kilos of tools, water, and everything one day, and then I'd be flying down it on the bike the next and do it all again.
Wow.
So I thought,
that sounds fun.
No, it's really good. Really enjoy it. So I thought, yeah, I'm in a good place. That'll be fine. That's not what the blood pressure told me. It was really high. It was like about 180 over 110, I think.
That is right.
Unknown to me. So I sort of said, do you think I should go straight across the road to the A&E? And the answer was, I think you probably should. So I spent a very long time in the A&E just waiting, because obviously it was really busy. They checked a few things and then said, you've got a problem with your bloods.
Right.
So I ended up being given a bed in the acute cardiac unit at about 2:30 in the morning. I woke up, I sort of looked around, I had a stretch. Everyone in there was a lot older than me.
Right.
And I thought, what am I doing there?
It's a big wake-up call.
It was a very big wake-up call. So actually the timings really worked out well, because I had been I do still go to the gym. And then they were offering a 3-week cleanse. And I thought, you know what? At any time in my life, I need to do this now, and it is such a game changer.
Well, what did the doctor say to you? What was the kind of prognosis, the reason why your blood pressure is so high? It could be ...
There are many elements that always are in life. One of them, potentially diet. I think salt could have been the problem. You have to deal with stress. It's tough, isn't it?
And they feed on each other. Of course, sometimes when we're stressed, we reach for the thing that makes us feel briefly better, which is often not very good for us.
Absolutely, and I've done it my entire life.
So you knocked it on the head almost overnight?
Yeah, so what I learned from this 3 weeks was about, they cut out virtually everything. So I could only really drink water, couldn't have any caffeine, so I was drinking caffeinated tea with no milk.
Right.
Only 3 weeks, and it was just eating, white meats, no red meats. You could eat fish, you could eat vegetables, no carbs, no bread, no pasta.
And what happened?
And I went with it. And it was hard, but I noticed the difference. I could see it physically.
How quickly?
I've lost. Within 2 weeks. Wow. Within 2 weeks, I could see that I'd lost my beer belly, and it was going. And I could see I was losing kind of fat everywhere. And that was just with one simple change. I mean, it is difficult because I am, like you just said about your lorry driver, I'm on the road and have been for well over 30 years.
Right.
So when you're there, you can see those big golden arches, from the motorway, pulling you in, going, just don't need that. I'm sat here pulled over looking at a service station. All I can see is sugar,
processed food, donuts, pasties, pies, cakes, crisps.
I've done that for years, so...
But you pushed through. And what about the way you feel as opposed to the way you look? Did you notice any differences there?
Absolutely. I feel a lot better. Okay, sometimes I still struggle to sleep, but that's a different element.
Yeah, of course.
I feel better. My memory's actually improved as well.
No, I believe you.
Which I wouldn't have expected.
No, I believe you. And finally, of course, we need to ask the blood pressure.
Blood pressure. So they put me on a low-dose Rampuril.
Right.
And the heart man checked my heart and said, look, this is short-term. If it's long-term, you have an enlarged heart, which you don't have.
So it was lifestyle, but it was, you caught it in the nick of time.
Absolutely that, James. So, now I do prepare my mackerel salad, and I love it. I never knew I could love salad.
What's in your mackerel? Is that smoked mackerel or just normal mackerel?
It's smoked mackerel. Smoked mackerel does have a higher salt content, but
not if you're not. I mean, it does, but you're leavening that with a lot of salad.
Absolutely.
Because you're not allowed. This isn't a ban on tasty stuff. It's just a balance, isn't it?
Don't get me wrong, I still, I'm now saying I will allow myself to eat something a couple of times a weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to remember that, because no one wants to live like a kind of medieval monk. Well, no, I don't want to say medieval monks lived really, really well. They were eating swans all the time. But nobody wants to live like a kind of, sort of
an ascetic. And that's the point. That's two calls who both, you can just hear it. Why would you not want to improve these areas of your life? Answer, because of the siren voices in your ears telling you to eat that or drink that. And you're never going to cut it down to diet. No one's suggesting that you should. But if 50% of your diet is linked to 32 diseases, then you are on a highway to nothing. Get it down to 30%, get it down to 20%, get it down to 10%. No one's saying get it down to 0%. And you will feel the difference within days, as Matt attests. More on the history would be good. Why do we think that the UK is particularly awful at this? And is it a coincidence that some of the worst performing countries are the USA, Australia and the UK? I had a feeling South Korea was really bad as well, actually. Probably something to do with advertising. But is there anything we can separate from the pack and apply uniquely to the United Kingdom? Is there anything we could point at and say that's why? Another thing, because no one wants to sound sententious or aloof, I happen to live really near supermarkets. But where I am now, I can be in Lidl or Morrison's in less than 5 minutes. So I shop for that night. I get off the bus outside the supermarket, I pop in the supermarket and I buy what I need that night. It means you throw away a lot less food, but it also means that you buy fresh. You don't, and I'd much rather make a bolognese sauce than buy a ready-made lasagna or something like that. That's just pleasure, but I've got a lot of time. That is in this cycle of my life. But living really near a shop is probably quite a big deal as well, and not something that everybody can do. Getting stuff, if you do a big shop, you want it to last for as long as possible, and that will involve buying stuff that's packed with preservatives because it lasts longer. Do you remember the tone of Bangkok Airport? Do you remember the moment I had at Bangkok Airport that really changed the way I look at these things? And it was such a strange one. Something similar has happened to you, and because you weren't off your belly on extremely powerful painkillers because your tooth was because you had an ear infection as a consequence of swimming for 2 weeks in the swimming pool, in the hotel swimming pool, then you may not have hit me with quite the sort of surreal impact that it hit me. But I just noticed the prices on the ice creams at Dairy Queen and the increments, so that buying a barrel of ice cream was only a little bit more expensive than buying a tiny cup. So the quantities went up in huge amounts, but the prices didn't go up by that much at all, because all of the energy was put upon squeezing a few more baht out of you, squeezing a few more dollars, squeezing a few more pounds out of you, by making it look like the only really good value one was the 2-litre tub that you then sit in the departure lounge shoving into your gob. But in fact, it's because what they were producing was so cheap, and what they were really doing was pursuing profit, nothing else. You become the commodity, and little things like that just show you what you're up against. Terry's in Southend. Terry, what would you like to say?
First off, I'm sorry that if I sound nervous.
You don't sound nervous at all. I don't know what you sound like the rest of the time, Terry. You sound great to me.
But I do think that you hit now on the head. You said that you've got a lot of time.
Yes.
You're quite fortunate with your job, I think.
Well, I'm never off duty, Terry. Let us not forget that. So I'm constantly on the lookout for fascinating areas of conversation and keeping up to date with developments as if my life depended on it. But yes, I do have a little bit more time to spend cooking than the average bear.
I mean, so me and my wife, we've both got an allotment together. We love to eat fresh food when we can. Our problem is lunches, so preparing food for lunch. So today I've got smoked ham cheddar cheese sandwich from Tesco's with paprika crisps and iron brew. 1,100 calories just at one meal. In the sandwich you're looking at 69 ingredients. So it's
how many?
69 ingredients. I counted them.
69.
Yeah.
In a ham and cheese sandwich.
Yeah.
Well, number one, gold star for Terry, top of the class for doing that level of research. Number two,
it's stupid. I think the problem with England and probably America is time. At work, I used to deliver to West London carpet shops, most of them were Muslim, and they would stop for about 2 hours every day and cook a proper curry out the back on a gas stove. You go over to Europe, so I've spent a lot of time in Malta, and they do the same. So for lunch, they'll take an hour and a half, 2 hours, and cook a fresh meal. Not many people in England tend to have that privilege.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I now work in retail, so basically it's grab a sandwich while you're serving customers.
So it's the work ethic, or the work life, the work balance. And see, I see it here with almost all of my colleagues will eat at their desk just as I'm leaving, actually, which again is part of my luck. But I'm not ever going to tell them not to, because that would be weird. But the simple sitting together and eating freshly prepared food, which is available here, and a lot of them will go upstairs and get it, but they'll eat at their desk, which means something is worse than if they were eating in a more communal and a more normal fashion.
Definitely. I mean, and by the time we get home from work, so we want to have a shower. When we get home from work, we want to eat. But by the time we get home from work, it's just quick to put something in the oven while you grab a shower.
I mean, bulk cooking. A lot of people bulk cook, don't they? So you could have, you know, but that lunch there is quite. I mean, what else could you have? Let's just think. I'm late for the break, so we won't spend too long on it. But we've got 69 ingredients in a ham and cheese sandwich. What could you have ordered? What could you have bought in that shop instead? So you could have got an apple instead of the paprika crisps, or you could have got. What's the thing I buy? I don't know if they're available in your shop, but there's a. Well, they might have the sort of spicy chickpeas. They come up much better. What would you get instead of the sandwich? A wrap of some sort? I don't know, but it's not going to make your juices flow, is it? It's not going to get your taste buds tingling in the way of what you've bought has done. At least not to start with. I don't know. I don't know what happens next. Did we lose Terry? I was just about to give him about to make him a new lunch. It is 11:46. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, and that of course brings us back to the full-time drivers. Because even if you're making your own sandwiches, there's no earthly way that you'll end up with 69 ingredients in it. Do you see what I mean? A bit of cheese, bit of tomato, don't really need the ham. And then bread. And bread is one of the things that will amaze you. So bread, you'd think, water, yeast, flour. 69 ingredients in a ham and cheese sandwich. So I go to one shop near me, the sort of Middle Eastern grocers, and the pita bread in there, ingredients, water, yeast, flour. It means it will go mouldy quicker if you don't freeze it, okay? Or you eat it before it goes mouldy. Water, yeast, flour. Go into the supermarket, pita bread, same name, same looking packet, but same product really in front of you, and it's more like the sandwich. 69 ingredients. It's not got 69 ingredients in it, but it's got more than 3. Water, yeast, flour. Good. Water, yeast, flour, preservatives, additives, colourings, whatever it is, bad. Simple. Or not. And the question of why, I think that's probably it. Why we have such a weird relationship with both work and food. Working to live as opposed to, or rather living to work as opposed to working to live.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why is there delay?
Straight to the point.
This government is unravelling everywhere you look.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
How can that make sense to anyone?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app. Download it now from your App Store. LBC.
How's the business going? We're busier than ever, but struggling to get the staff we need. Recruiting can be such a distraction. We gave Job Centre Plus a try, and they've really helped us out. Really? Yeah, it was dead easy. We got our own employer advisor, Julie, who helps advertise our jobs, shortlisted candidates for us, and let us interview at the Job Centre. We've hired some great people, and Job Centre Plus really took the hassle out of it, and there was no fee.
Brilliant. That's straight on my to-do list.
Find out more at business.gov.uk/recruits. Eligibility criteria apply.
With Lloyd's Home Insurance, there's £50,000 to be won. When you cover the glassware no one's actually allowed to use, or the garden shed, aka your fortress of calm. Rated excellent on Trustpilot, you can be confident with your cover when you take out a new home insurance policy and be in for a chance to win £50,000. Get a quote with Lloyd's today. Buy a new home insurance policy direct from us by the 31st of December 2025. Offer T's and C's apply. Policy terms, limits and exclusions apply.
At Laithwaite's, we go to great lengths to bring you great wine. We go far and wide. Searching high, and we mean really high, and low. And we mean stored deep underground in a cave. Off the shelf? We don't go there. Off the beaten track? We certainly go there. And the best bit is, we even come to you. Order now at laithwaite's.co.uk. Laithwaite's. We stop at nothing to bring you great wine.
For people living with dementia, Christmas can be confusing, overwhelming, heartbreaking. Families are often left to cope alone. But you can help a family reimagine Christmas. Donate to Alzheimer's Society and you can help provide practical support, expert advice and crucial companionship this Christmas. It will take a society to beat dementia, and we can't do it without you. Search Alzheimer's Society and donate today.
Things are really heating up in the country's smallest house. Dad! Squealed Mia Mouse. We could save around £100 by setting the boiler flow temperature to 60 degrees. And turning radiators down in rooms we don't use, interrupted Mo. Yes, Mo. Turn them down, not off, said Mia. Plus binding and blocking drafts, said Mo. Should save enough to increase our allowance. A little saves a lot. You could save around £100 a year off your energy bills with 3 tips at gov.uk/clean energy.
This is LBC. Message James O'Brien on WhatsApp now on 0345 6060 973.
It is 11:51. I mean, there is a lot you can do. I'm trying to find the thing that I buy at the railway station when I come home that way. And on bread, Jason's is very popular, but it's going to be more expensive than the own brand white slice. A Waitrose samosa comes in at excellent. So these are the things I've done. Right? I find it really boring. That's fine. But rather than getting a great sausage roll, if you've got that snacky feeling, I now will hopefully walk past a Waitrose, and they're at the station quite often as well, and get their samosa. I haven't tested any other samosa, but a prawn mayonnaise sandwich is poor. That will come in at about 45 out of 100 on the app, whereas the samosa comes in at 78 out of 100. And then there's a cheese and ham sandwich as well, just like our last fellas, which comes in at 3 out of 100, and that's from Pret a Manger. Well, just little things that I find interesting, because food is one of the great universals. The Marks and Spencer's dried mango, which you might get from the snack aisle because you're feeling snacky, comes in as pork. It's got sulphites on the additives column. It comes in as pork. So Marks and Spencer's dried mango, you'd think, I'll get that instead of some sweets. But the thing that comes in as good, or actually it comes in as excellent, it gets 78 out of 100. It's in the Indian food aisle in my local Morrison's, and it is sweetened mango pulp made by a company called Kesar, Kesar. So sometimes I forget to do it. Sometimes I go mad for doing it, checking the barcodes to get the additive content and the ultra-processed food impact. So I buy a tin of that, which is nowhere near expensive, and I stick it in the ice cream maker. Now, I know not everybody has got an ice cream maker, but that makes a sorbet that is, actively healthy. But then you go for the dried mango bits that you see in the snack aisle, and they're actively not. It's just weird once you get into it. It can be strangely fascinating, strangely addictive, actually, to test everything. But we haven't really nailed the question of why we're so rubbish at it. Chris is in Glasgow. Chris, what have you got?
Pleasure to talk to you, June. As a chef of 40 years, I basically look upon it as corporate consumerism is to blame, as well as a general lack of laziness. Now, I mean, obviously I cook from fresh where possible, but I mean, ultra fresh would be getting it from the farm, or getting it from the bakery, or getting it from the butcher. We don't have them anymore in Britain.
No, again, you do if you're lucky, or if you've got a few quid, you can go. I've got butchers that I have a relationship with, so to speak, and they'll tell me, well, I've got this in and I've got that in, and you might like this, and hand over, remember what I bought last time, and how did you get on with that? But that is rare, isn't it? Even if you go to
even sorry, even just like a proper fishmonger, where you can actually find what you would say good governance, where you can actually sort of like trace the lineage of the product back to its original source.
you know,
Well, that's been true here since the Second World War, probably, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, probably. I mean, I was telling you, researching there, that, I mean, since the age of 16, I benefited from having a Mediterranean diet. You know, like garlic, fennel, you know, like things that, you know, your average Joe Soap in the streets wouldn't even know how to cook.
And yet, I used to spend a lot of time in Greece, and the family that I was with, the dad was, you know, he'd come to this country to visit, and he'd laugh in our supermarkets, even at the fresh food, because all the tomatoes look the same. So we've got a weird relationship with food in this country. There's these sort of homogenous, identical tomatoes, which don't really... No person who grows their own is going to recognise the idea of all 6 of them in a packet being almost identical in dimensions and the same shade of red. Yeah, if it's got a bit of a scab on it, then you cut it off before you put it in your salad and stuff. We're a bit sanitised, we're a bit infantilised, aren't we? We're a bit nursery food in this country. And nursery food is kind of close to ultra-processed because it's high levels of preparation. I like that. A relationship with the land and the relationship with work would perhaps explain why we're world-beating when it comes to consuming ultra-processed foods. Chris, take care. Mark is in Southampton. Mark, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. This really resonated with me. So I lived in France for quite a few years, and I've really adopted their lifestyle, and everyone is so knowledgeable about food there, about foraging. They're all out there at weekends picking wild asparagus, you know, as a family thing. And I was very impressed with that, but I came back to England when we had children, decided to make a life here, and I slipped, I must admit, I kind of forgot all that and slipped into the...
Oh, it's so easy to do. It's called convenience food for a reason.
Yeah, I was busy, but I got diagnosed stage 4 cancer. That's okay, it's fine. They put me on immunotherapy, and I've been cancer-free for about 4 years. But it really gave me a chance to look at how I was eating, and as a family, we've all really changed how we eat completely. Grow a lot of our own vegetables and spend time. Now, I've got busy again now with my work, but it's just our habits, and I think that is a lot of the problem that I see around me. People are just in this habit of just grabbing food, grabbing tasty food, not really thinking of it in a medicinal way, which is why I think the Europeans have got more of a handle on.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? In a way, it's an unhelpful question or an unhelpful comparison, because we're talking about 2 destinations arrived at via completely different journeys. So what you're saying is that it's a habit you have to break. There's not much point looking at France for inspiration. You're just going to see a difference in France. But the journey we take, yeah. So the journey we take to the same place is going to be very different from the French journey. We need to undo and reverse, recalibrate and rethink.
Totally, yeah.
And the effort put into dissuading us from doing that is I mean, there's the psychological side, and then there's the financial side, the money spent on making us make bad choices, and the psychology of the easy option. You know, I always think of the fixed odds betting terminals, Mark. And when I read into the science behind them, I was astonished by the level of engineering that goes into getting the calibrations just right to make us keep pumping money into them. Just enough comes out again, just enough winning. The margins are incredibly sophisticated, and the same is true of ultra-processed food in terms of what they put in it to make us crave more and more and more and more. But yeah, a health scare is going to be one of the things that rips the scales from your eyes, that's for sure. It is 11:58. Natasha has joined us. PMQ is on the horizon. And just a quick word on the apps the single app I've been recommending. It's not the answer to everything. They are good. They are a force for good, but obviously balanced diets involve rather more than just checking the barcode of everything you buy and making all your decisions based upon that. But for all the people that have asked, the one that I use is called Yucca, Y-U-K-A. And the first thing that you'll be shocked by is the convenience food, the petrol station sandwich or the supermarket sandwich. Even I'm shocked. The lad who just told us that his ham and cheese sandwich had 69 ingredients in it. If you read the ingredients of something and you don't know what the words mean, or you've never seen them in your fridge or in your cupboard, chances are it's not very good for you. You can have that for nothing. Natasha Clark is here to tell us exactly what's going to come up at PMQs today.
Yeah, on that, I was trying to find lemonade yesterday without, is it saccharin?
Is it? Saccharin.
Saccharin, that's it. And but 90% of the ones I was looking at all had that, and plus another 10, 20 ingredients that I've got no idea of.
Water, lemon and sugar.
I know, that's all you really should need with lemonade, but apparently no. But yes, final PMQs before the budget next week, so you would expect an economic focus this week, as incorrectly predicted by me last week. It makes much more sense to do it this week, because this is the final chance that she's got, especially, of course, as we had those inflation figures out today, giving the Chancellor a bit of good news. However, food inflation still very high, falling to 3.6% in October, lowest in 7 months, which just means that she has she has more money to spend on other things. So it's spending less money on our debt. Not all good news, of course. Energy prices rising, but still rising a little bit of a slower pace.
She can't go in on that, can she?
No, but I think she will go in on, here's my list of things that I would do if I were delivering a budget next week, and those are the things that I think you could do. And she's talked about this yesterday, saying cuts to VAT on energy bills is something that the government have said that they will look at. Another idea is cutting some of the green levies, which are on household bills. That's been something that Conservatives have liked to speak about, and they say that they would totally cut those, and that would save hundreds of pounds on energy bills, and that's something that the government promised during the election. The other thing I think she might mention, there's been some job losses up in a plant in Scotland, an ethylene plant in Fife, 450 jobs at risk. That's been something that she, I think, might mention. She thinks that these jobs are going to exist, just not here in Britain, is linking that back to sort of the government's support of businesses, NICs, of course, and the energy price cap we are expecting to see set on Friday, so that might be something that she might lean into as well.
Any ambushes? Anything that would be, that she might... the